Hey, everybody. So glad to be here with all of you tonight. A lot is going on, a lot to update you on. I am very, very excited. February has begun. Let's do it. Let's have another late night conversation.
Spoken of the American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Welcome, everybody. So glad to be here with all of you tonight. We are going to have yet another one of our great late night conversations, all about world events and all the exciting things that are happening in our world and all the things that are going on. So for those of you who may not be familiar with the format that we use and the way we do things here, first I give my opening remarks. That's whatever it is I'm looking to talk about. I give my opening remarks. Then from there, we do a roll call where we find out who's watching, who's on the other side of the camera. And then from there, I answer your questions for the remainder of the night. I answer Rumble rants that are sent in on Rumble, and I answer super chats that are sent in on YouTube. That's the way we do it. So if you have something you would like me to comment on, respond to a question you'd like me to answer, send it in. Super chats, Rumble rants for the second half of the show. That's the way we do things. Now, just a couple announcements to get out of the way as we're getting going here. Minneapolis. We are having an important workshop in Minneapolis on Saturday, February 22nd. It's called Do You Believe in Growth? I'll be there. Peter Coffin will be there. It's going to be a great gathering in Minneapolis. So if you're able to join us, please go ahead and register. Please register for the workshop. There is the registration link to sign up. We're going to be sending out the official announcement and invitation in a few days, but it's going to be, we've got a nice house that we're going to be using in Minneapolis for the workshop. It's going to be awesome. I think it's going to be a great one-day get together, or one-day shindig. It's going to be good. I have actually never been to Minneapolis before. Can you believe it? I've never been to Minneapolis, but this will be the first time to get up there, and it's going to be good. Music, speeches, all of that. So I'm very, very excited. So if you'd like to get involved with our community, meet other CPI people, eat some good food, hear some good music, learn what it's all about, by all means, go ahead and sign up and register to come to our workshop that we are doing in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We will be having our Do You Believe in Growth workshop. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be great. It's going to be tremendous, absolutely tremendous. I hope to see you there in Minneapolis. Now, that's the big announcement. As you know, the organization associated with this YouTube channel is the Center for Political Innovation. We are a great group doing great organizing against the system of globalism, imperialism that is keeping our country in poverty and holding back development around the world. CPIUSA.org. And we always need more people to become members. So if you like what we're doing here, you can always join CPI. It's very easy to become a member. So become a member today. Join the Center for Political Innovation. And we're doing great stuff, and we'd love to have you as a member. So yeah, on that note, I will just jump into today's live stream. The opening remarks that I've got for tonight. Opening remarks are followed by the roll call, where I call you all out as I see you, and we find out who's watching and where they're from. And after that, I answer your questions for the remainder of the show. So if there's something you want me to talk about in the second half of the show, what I need you to do is to send in a super chat on YouTube or a Rumble rant on Rumble. That's the way we do things. So yeah, I'm going to jump into it. Folks, the subject for my stream tonight is the fact that, I guess I'll put it on the screen here. Hold on. The fact that a representative of Donald Trump met with President Nicolas Maduro of Venezuela. And that is the subject of tonight's stream. But there's so much more context. So much more context that this is happening. You have to remember there's no relationship. There's no official diplomatic relationship between the United States and Venezuela at this time. The USA does not recognize the Venezuelan government, but a representative of Donald Trump shook hands with Nicolas Maduro, and 5 or 6 Americans who'd been arrested in Venezuela for trying to overthrow the Venezuelan government have been returned to the United States. I don't know. I guess I'll pull up the picture of that. Hold on. Hold on. Here they are. These are what was it? Yeah, 6 Americans that were arrested in Venezuela that have been now returned to the United States after a meeting took place between Nicolas Maduro and Trump's representative, Richard Grenell. And so these guys who were in prison in Venezuela, they were CIA operatives in Venezuela that were trying to overthrow the Venezuelan government. They got arrested for it. And they're on their way home. I think they already got home. This is them on the plane back to the United States. Some kind of agreement was reached between the Venezuelan government and the Trump administration. And this is all very, very exciting. Very, very, very exciting. And I'm going to talk more about this later. But I want you to understand the context. I really do, because there's no way. It's almost like walking into the movie halfway through. You're walking into the movie halfway through the movie, and it's like, to understand what's really, really going on here. A couple years ago, 2 years ago, I put out this book, Where is America Going? Marxism, MAGA, and the Coming Revolution. I put this book out there. There's an audiobook version of it. Tyler, friend of the show, he did a YouTube audio book of the book. I went on Kim Iverson's show to talk about it. And I wrote this book. And in this book, I explained that there's a big fight in the American power structure. And it's related to the economic crisis. And it's related to the rising new economy around the world. And that there's a fight going on between the entrenched power of the Anglo-American establishment, the Eastern establishment, essentially the British Empire, the Wall Street monopolies, the big oil companies, and the intelligence apparatus, and the bulk of the U.S. economy. And this is the Yankee and Cowboy War that Carl Oglesby wrote about. This is the fight between the Eastern establishment and the military-industrial complex and the bulk of the U.S. economy that goes back to Cold War days. This is something that many people who understand the dynamics of American politics have been aware of for some time, that there is an entrenched center of power in the United States that is tied in with the intelligence agencies, that is tied in with the old money oligarchy, the ultra-monopolistic bankers and oil monopolies of the United States that are tied in with the global system, versus the bulk of the American rich who just want to make money. And those two are at odds with each other. And as the economy of the United States gets worse, and as there is a long-term economic crisis due to technology and all kinds of things that we've talked about on here before, the fight between these two factions is getting more intense. And that those of us who want a new America for working families, those of us who are opposed to this economic system called globalism, imperialism, where big banks and monopolies keep themselves rich by making the world poorer and poorer and use war to maintain their power and hold back development and keep people in poverty and are trying to drive the population down to maintain their power. Those of us who are opposed to globalism, imperialism, and want to create a new America where working families thrive, where working families come first, and jobs and education and healthcare is available to all, and human growth and creativity is unleashed. Those of us who are opposed to imperialism, to the monopolistic imperialist system centered around big banks and corporations, we have to do our best to intervene in this ongoing crisis, this ongoing fight among the American elite, to advance the interests of America's working families and the people of the world in their struggle against imperialism. And that we have a responsibility to pay attention to the divisions in the American elite, to pay attention to the divisions among the American intelligence apparatus, among the military brass, etc., and try to advance an agenda of creating global peace and economic growth and economic opportunity to rebuild America by tearing down imperialism. That is the perspective that we have put forward on this channel. We are the true American patriots. We love our country. We love the working families of this country. We want new highways and roads and bridges and economic opportunities for this country. And we are advocates of an America that serves the people of America, not the huge multinational corporations that are impoverishing America and maintaining a global international apparatus, an international financial oligarchy that's about holding back development. We are opposed to globalism, imperialism. We are advocates of American working families and American economic growth and economic expansion. We believe that we ultimately need a government of action that controls the banks and the factories and the industries and the centers of economic power in order to make it function in the interests of the people and to oversee long-term economic growth. And that's the perspective that we have long put forward on this channel. We are anti-globalists. We are anti-imperialists. We are advocates of innovationism. We celebrate human creativity, human growth. We want living standards to rise, and we want a rationally planned economy where the banking system and the oil is in the hands of the people, and where human growth and creativity is allowed to soar to new heights with a state that is actively investing in the population and sees the people and their creative ability and their labor power as the ultimate asset in a real economy that is based on solid economic expansion and gains, physical economy, not speculation and Wall Street ripoff schemes. We want a real physical economy, new opportunities, new wealth being generated. That's the perspective that we put forward, which we have advocated with our slogan, "We need a government of action that fights for working families." A government of action that fights for working families. We need a government of action that fights for working families, and we loudly say we oppose the low-wage police state that the imperialists are trying to set up, and we oppose the danger of a new world war. We stand against the danger of a new world war. We stand against the emerging low-wage police state, and we are for a government of action that fights for working families. Working families first. We want a good life and economic opportunity for every man, woman, and child living in America. We want economic expansion and growth, not this death system that the bankers have created, not the wars to enforce it, not the impoverishment and pessimism that goes with it. And that is our perspective. And, at one time we were calling this perspective communism or socialism. My history is in the left as a communist, but at this point, we have come to the conclusion that we're in uncharted territory, and the woke left has really gone out of its way to be our enemy. We are not the woke left, but we do not advocate free market chaos and austerity either. right? We believe in investing in people. We believe in a rationally planned economy that unleashes human creativity. So we're not left in the sense that we are not woke. We are not into cancel culture. We're not obsessed with the LGBT issue. We're not waging culture wars. We're not calling people racist 24 hours a day and, getting triggered and emotional and trying to tear down people. We're not doing that. So we're not on the left, but we're not on the right either, right? We don't believe in the free market. We don't believe that the free market is just magic, and we don't believe in cutting the jobs of government workers. We don't think that a crackdown on immigrant workers is going to really improve things here in the United States. We're not thrilled about mass migration, but we see it as a result of the decaying globalist imperialist system. And we certainly do not, support Israel. We do not support destabilizing governments. We don't buy into the stupid anti-communism that seems to define a lot of right-wing politics in America. So we are neither left nor right. We are American patriots. We are advocates for working families. We are anti-globalists and anti-imperialists. We stand with the new economy that is rising around the world, the BRICS economy. That's the perspective that we put forward with the Center for Political Innovation. We are innovationists. We are advocates of human growth. We are advocates of creativity. We believe in human beings and their ability to reinvent themselves and to stand up against injustice and to march forward. It's a very exciting time to be alive. And that is largely our perspective. So what is going on in America? Folks, we are witnessing right now one of the biggest political upheavals that I have ever seen. And this is huge. You don't know how big this is. Look, I remember when Barack Obama got in, everyone thought, oh, this is big, this is huge, but that was nothing. Nothing really changed with Barack Obama. There was some hope for the Palestinians, but that faded away pretty quick. There was some hope, but when Barack Obama got in, not much changed. It was pretty clear within a week or two that this was just the same old imperialist system framing itself a little bit differently. But Donald Trump has gotten into office. Folks, at this very moment, the website of one of the main regime change intelligence apparatuses, USAID, is down. The USAID, the U.S. Agency for International Development, which is one of the main vehicles that the intelligence agencies, the CIA, use to destabilize countries, their website doesn't even work right now. All U.S. aid has been frozen for 90 days, except for aid to Israel. Not thrilled about that, but U.S. aid to Ukraine is frozen. U.S. aid to every country in the world except Israel is completely frozen right now. And the USAID website is down. It does not work. This is big. On top of that, all of the intelligence officials who were involved in trying to rig the elections and prevent Donald Trump from winning last time by covering up the Hunter Biden laptop story, all of them have had their security clearances removed. The January 6th defendants, all the people that went to prison for participating in what we now know was a FBI sting, which was, that doesn't mean all these people didn't do bad things. Some of them certainly did things that were illegal that they shouldn't have done. But the whole thing was set up by the FBI. Now we know that the FBI was involved in making it happen. The January 6th prisoners have been released in big numbers. They are being let out of prison. The guy who set up the website Silk Road, Ross Ulbricht, he's been let out of prison. I'm telling you, big changes are happening. This is very, very massive. And the fact that the Trump administration just sent an official representative of Donald Trump to Venezuela, and there was a handshake and agreement between the Venezuelan president and the Trump administration official, that's big. And now I got to show you what's happened here. Marco Rubio is a longtime politician from Florida who is just the biggest CIA shill you ever heard of. He's of Cuban heritage, so he's an anti-communist. He's a neocon, all of this. When Trump named him Secretary of State, I thought, oh, shit, I couldn't stand Marco Rubio. I haven't been able to stand him. Well, now Marco Rubio is the Secretary of State, and he's officially frozen aid to Ukraine. He's frozen USAID. He's taken the website down, and he just did this interview with Megyn Kelly. This is what Marco Rubio had to say about the war in Ukraine.
One of those issues that's become dicey within the Republican Party is NATO. We've talked a lot about these other countries doing their fair share and doing their part. And this is why NATO's become controversial, because there are many people who believe, what are we doing this for? It made sense right after World War II, but does it make sense today? And the United States tends to be the dominant player. The Europeans can support themselves. They don't need the United States to be the big babysitter of the world. And it creates more opportunities for us to get involved in foreign conflicts that we shouldn't be involved in. To that, you say what?
Well, the president's position on NATO is the same every other president has had, and that is that our allies, many of our allies in NATO, do not do enough to provide for their own security. Every other president's made the same complaint. He's just actually been serious about it, and that's what he's pointing to. And look, it's interesting, and in fairness, Poland, Lithuania, Estonia, the closer you are to Russia, the more they're spending as a percentage of their GDP on national defense. But then you have countries like France, okay, or you have countries like Germany. These are big economies, powerful economies, and they don't spend as much on national security. Now, why? Because they rely on NATO. They say, well, we don't need to spend that much on... Yeah, we don't need to spend as much on defense because America has soldiers here, and if they get attacked, they'll be our national defense. So we can instead spend all that money on this enormous social safety net. When you ask those countries, why can't you spend more on national security, their argument is because it would require us to make cuts to welfare programs, to unemployment benefits, to being able to retire at 59 and all these other things. That's a choice they made. But we're subsidizing that. So I think if you were to articulate the president's point on NATO, is number one, they need to do more. And I do think long term, there's a conversation to be had about whether the United States needs to be at the front end of securing the continent or as a backstop to securing the continent. And if you talk to countries on the eastern periphery, the ones closest to Russia, all of them are building the capability to be at the front end. The Poles, the Czechs, all of these different places. And if you move further west to the richest economies, Germany, France, Spain, they don't spend enough on national security. They're relying on us to be the front stop. And that's not an alliance. That's a dependence. And we don't want that. We want NATO. We want a NATO in which we have strong and capable allies. Finland's a very capable ally. They make weapons. They bring something to the table. We need more countries like that to behave in that manner in the alliance. And then it'll be a stronger alliance. And it'll be able to work cooperatively, not just in Europe, but in other challenges we face around the world. Hopefully even the Indo-Pacific potentially.
Ukraine's another issue that's got the party divided. You've got a lot. I'm sticking within Republicans now because there's a whole other debate with the other side of the aisle, but who say, no, Putin's a bad actor, Russia's a growing threat, and we're doing the right thing by backing Ukraine. And I would say the majority of Republicans now are against that viewpoint and think we've spent too much. It's any place from 105 billion to 187 billion. And they've lost. We just have to be realistic about the fact that Ukraine has lost. It's not going to gain back any of this ground, and we need a negotiated settlement now before we keep throwing good money after bad, and we can't afford it. We've got Americans who are suffering now. I think that's the majority view, even on the Republican side now.
It also happens to be the reality on the ground. First, let me say this. We think what Putin did was terrible. Invading a country, the atrocities he's committed, he did horrible things. But what the dishonesty that has existed is that we somehow led people to believe that Ukraine would be able not just to defeat Russia, but destroy them, push them all the way back to what the world looked like in 2012 or 2014, before the Russians took Crimea and the like. And in the result, what they've been asking for the last year and a half is to fund a stalemate, a protracted stalemate in which human suffering continues. Meanwhile, Ukraine is being set back 100 years. Their energy grid is being wiped out. I mean, someone's going to have to pay for all this reconstruction after the fact. And how many Ukrainians have left Ukraine living in other countries now? They may never return. I mean, that's their future, and it's endangered in that regard. So the president's point of view is this is a protracted conflict, and it needs to end. Now, it needs to enter a negotiation.
Now, everything he just said there is a huge, huge revelation. We're going to continue this clip. But the idea that the American politicians care about Ukraine is such malarkey. It is absolutely malarkey. And he just admitted there was no way Ukraine was going to win against Russia. They had no chance. But the U.S. government pushed them into this conflict, and people are fleeing the country en masse, and the country has been destroyed. And it's been bad for Ukraine. And Ukraine hasn't benefited here. And Ukraine is not benefiting. And dumping billions and billions more of our tax dollars into a war and continuing to use Ukraine as a pawn against Russia. And it's not good for Ukraine. Now, this is the first time I've heard Marco Rubio ever say anything that I agree with, right? But here he is. He's admitting that spending hundreds of billions of American taxpayer dollars based on this lie that somehow Ukraine was going to win this war has not been good for Ukraine. This war has devastated Ukraine, and it's a stalemate that that Ukraine is not going to win against Russia. They're not, the idea that they're going to seize Crimea and they're just going to no, not going to happen, right? And that the Biden administration, by putting that out there, was perpetrating a lie that cost hundreds of billions of American taxpayer dollars. It cost hundreds of thousands of lives. And at the end of the day, there is no hope for Ukraine. Ukraine is going to, at this point, Ukraine made the decision. They wouldn't implement the Minsk agreement. They would not allow the people in Donbass to keep speaking their language, to keep their World War II memorials up. They wouldn't stop murdering the people living there. I've shown this. The Wikipedia has banned the Alley of Angels from, I don't want you to see this, but since 2014, the Ukrainian government has been slaughtering people in Donbass. And the Ukrainian government just decided, nope. We're just going to keep killing. We're not going to respect these people. We're not going to pretend or even act like the lives of these children matter. And they kept going with this, and the USA funded it, and the CIA was there training their people. And now hundreds of thousands of people are dead. And the idea that Ukraine is going to somehow win and drive Russia out of Crimea and force all these people in the eastern regions to just give up their culture and give up their language, and it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen, right? And prolonging this war is not good for Ukraine, and it's not good for anybody. Certainly not good for America. That's huge. Now, wow. The fact, I never thought Marco Rubio would say something that the Biden administration would never admit, but it gets better.
Negotiation, both sides are going to have to give something up. I'm not going to pre-negotiate that. That's going to be the work of hard diplomacy, which is what we used to do in the world in the past, and we were realistic about it. But both sides in a negotiation have to give something. And that's going to take time. But at least we have a president that recognizes that our objective is this conflict needs to end, and it needs to end in a way that's enduring, because it's an unsustainable. On all sides, it's ultimately unsustainable. For Russia's paying a big price for this in their own economy, their inflation rate and the like. But at the end, that's the president's position. And it's the truth. And I think even a growing number of Democrats would now acknowledge that what we have been funding is a stalemate, a protracted conflict, and maybe even worse than a stalemate, one in which incrementally Ukraine is being destroyed and losing more and more territory. So this conflict needs to end.
Who's the bigger problem in reaching a final negotiated settlement there, right? Is it Putin or is it Zelensky? There's a report out that the Ukrainians are just banking on Putin digging his heels in and becoming annoying to President Trump on this because he won't give an inch. And they're hoping that President Trump will come back over closer to their worldview about Putin, about Russia, about this conflict. So who do you see as the bigger obstacle into getting a negotiated peace there?
Well, I think there's the public and then there's the private, right? So in what you see portrayed publicly in conversations and what leaders say, a lot of it is speaking, they have domestic political considerations. Even Vladimir Putin, who controls media, still has to care about what public opinion is in Russia and his image and what, what his entire personality is built around.
Why do you think he does the shirtless pictures?
He didn't do those anymore. I think it's been a while.
I asked him, why do you do it? When I interviewed him, and he said, I give the people what they want.
Yeah, well, the point is that he has got his own domestic considerations, and so does Zelensky, right? At the end of the day, he's got, if you imagine if you're a Ukrainian, the Russians have made you suffer so much, and now you're going to let them keep land. People would be upset about that in Ukraine, and you would understand it. And then there's the mature realities of life on this planet. And that's where this work is going to have to be defined. Both sides are paying a heavy price for this. Both sides have incentive for this conflict to end. Both sides are, it's not going to end with the maximalist goals of either side. And there's going to have to be a lot of hard work done. And I think only the United States under the leadership of President Trump can make that possible. But it won't be easy, and it'll take some time, but it's certainly something I know he's strongly committed to seeing happen.
So the position of the new administration in the White House is that the war in Ukraine needs to end as soon as possible, and that the idea that it's going to win, that Ukraine is going to win or Ukraine needs to win is stupid and idiotic. This is all very, 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 very exciting. Folks, in order to get you to understand the situation that we're in now, I have to tell you about the Center for Political Innovation. Our organization is on fire right now. Out in Los Angeles, our members have been volunteering and helping people in the aftermath of the fires. Our members just protested against the Shenyun, the Falun Gong anti-China propaganda ballet show. They're doing a great job. On top of that, we just had an Inauguration Day event. But before that, I've just got to tell you, this is the first time I'm going to say this. I'm not going to go into too much detail tonight. I'll tell you more about it. We prevented a riot on Inauguration Day. There was going to be a riot on Inauguration Day against Donald Trump. And we blew the whistle about it. And we raised the alarm about it. And first we put out a press release about it. And PSL, the Party of Socialism and Liberation, Brian Becker, all of them got defensive and started saying, oh, no, it's not just a protest against Trump. It's a protest against the Democrats, too. Then I went on George Galloway's show and I called out PSL for the fact that they were planning this demonstration that was going to facilitate the Antifa riots. George Galloway retweeted and shared the video of me calling for PSL to cancel their demonstration. And then a PSL person actually called into George Galloway's show outraged about what I said and trying to disavow. And he admitted that I was telling the truth. He said that, oh, yeah, at the rallies PSL has around Palestine, agent provocateurs, Antifa types do show up, but that's not PSL. And George Galloway admitted and said basically that what I said was true as well. And PSL got on the defensive about, oh my God, it's not going to be an anti-Trump rally. No. It's a rally against both sides, which is ridiculous because they didn't riot when Biden took office. And they got defensive. And suddenly they started encouraging people to go to their rally in New York City instead of their rally in D.C. The caller on George Galloway's show told people to go to the rally the day beforehand and not on Inauguration Day. And PSL ended up having a rally on Inauguration Day, but it was miles and miles away from Donald Trump's inauguration. They weren't anywhere near downtown. Their rally was like in the middle of the woods, if you look at their rally. And they didn't even show very many videos of it. They just showed their rallies in New York. We prevented a riot on Inauguration Day by raising the alarm in anti-imperialist circles, by pointing out that this rally was going to be used by NATO intelligence, by putting pressure on PSL, forcing PSL to go, no, it's a rally against Democrats also, and getting on George Galloway's show and all of that. We had a lot to do with the fact that there was peace in the streets of Washington, D.C. on Inauguration Day. Now, I've got a video coming out soon that'll go over this point by point, because right now you might be saying, oh, that sounds crazy, Caleb. No, you have to watch the timeline. We have all of PSL's statements recorded. We have a timeline. You will see that, the cold weather helped, obviously. But the fact that there was peace in the streets of Washington, D.C., that had a lot to do with the work that we did, right? Because, PSL are not genuinely anti-imperialists. They're a woke protest club. They are a woke protest hustle. And they are trying their hardest, to facilitate, and try to keep people with anti-imperialist views, people that might be sympathetic to Venezuela or Cuba or China or Iran, keep them tied to the Democrats, even though the Democrats are the more pro-war, pro-imperialist party. And we put enough pressure on them that it looks like we prevented them from doing what they did last time Trump took office and facilitating an Antifa riot. And so we've got a video coming out explaining that. But That was a huge accomplishment on our part. We basically set the stage that if the Antifa riot would have happened, everyone would have known who was responsible, would have pointed right at Brian Becker. Everyone would have known what was going on, right? And it looks like they pulled back and they didn't riot. They didn't riot, and we forced them to stand down, and we created peace in the streets of Washington, D.C. when Donald Trump took office. But it's not just that. So what did we do on Inauguration Day? We had a small demonstration of our own, and we brought our huge banner of Trump and Kim Jong-un shaking hands, the Peace MAGA banner. On top of that, we brought another banner that said "Build the Peace Bridge," and it had talked about a bridge over the Bering Sea. And we went to the Capital One Arena where Donald Trump's supporters were going to watch the inauguration, where Donald Trump spoke later that day and all of that. We went to the Capital One Arena and we did our outreach. And what happened? They showed our video, a video of us and that big banner on Radio Free Europe. Now, that surprised us, right? Washington Post took our picture and didn't run it. No shocker there, right? The deep state doesn't like us. Washington Post, Jeff Bezos, right? But Radio Free Europe filmed us with our Trump and Kim shaking hands. Only peace can make America great again. And they showed it. They did not show any other banner, right? There were Christian groups out there. There were other people. They showed people selling Trump hats, and they showed us. Why? They were sending a message, right? You think the people at Radio Free Europe, which is basically an intelligence network, you think they don't know who Center for Political Innovation is? Do you think they don't know who I am? The RT guy, you think they don't know who I am? And you think that by putting that on Radio Free Europe and sending that, they weren't sending a message? That was very, very blatant, right? And the new administration coming in was sending a message that, look, we do want to negotiate. We will, we don't hate people like Caleb and people that want peace. And you know what? Here's Caleb. Here's the CPI banner. That was huge, right? The deep state basically said, you know what? We're open to the message that people like Caleb, people like Center for Political Innovation are putting out there. And they put that on Radio Free Europe. Now, that's big. Usually people like Radio Free Europe are the people that smear me and people that would call us traitors to the country and want us in jail. Not this time. That's big. That's big. So then what happened? Well, we had our event on Inauguration Day. I was just back in Washington, D.C. 2 days ago. Why? Tulsi Gabbard is set to become the director of national intelligence. And Tulsi Gabbard, it looks like she is got enough votes. She's going to get through. It's going to be close, but it looks like she's going to get through. Folks, Tulsi Gabbard, do I have to show you the clip again? I'll show you the clip. I'll show you the clip again, right? I've got the clip. I can't get over this clip. Let me show you the clip. I can't get over this, right? But Tulsi Gabbard, we like Tulsi Gabbard, and Tulsi Gabbard likes us, I've shown this clip before. It always makes me smile. This is from Roger Stone's podcast. This is Trevor Loudon of the Epoch Times.
Really there to promote Russian and North Korean foreign policies. She may not understand that, but she's being used by people like Dennis Kucinich and others to do that. She also has some connections to the Center for Political Innovation, which is a very pro-Russian outfit run by a man called Caleb Maupin.
Did you hear that? Right? So on the official Roger Stone, a very important person, on his podcast, somebody said that she's tied to us. And she's basically quoted my book about Kamala Harris. She's basically quoted it on Jordan Peterson's podcast and in other places. Her staff at least knows about it. And she's more or less quoted our book on Kamala Harris. And somebody made a decision for our book on Kamala Harris to go viral, after Amazon banned it. Somebody made a decision, obviously. Books get banned from Amazon all the time and nothing happens. But the fact that Max Blumenthal and Jimmy Dore and Kim Iverson all of a sudden jumped on my book, that was There was somebody who decided that they were going to make our book that we published on Kamala Harris and her ties to the deep state and the intelligence apparatus go viral. Tulsi Gabbard apparently, has quoted basically, the thesis of the book, even long before that when she was talking to Jordan Peterson. And so somebody who, according to mainstream media outlets, according to Trevor Loudon, according to Roger Stone's podcast, somebody who's tied to CPI is about to become the director of national intelligence. This is somebody, she wouldn't say that Edward Snowden was a traitor. She called out the U.S. government for funding al-Qaeda to overthrow Syria, and she's about to become the director of national intelligence. Now, another bit of news you all should be aware of, Angela McArdle, who is the chair of the Libertarian Party, who is a friend of the Center for Political Innovation. She's been on this YouTube channel before. We've done streams together. She organized the Rage Against the War Machine rally, which we sponsored, and we were official sponsors of, and she put our logo on the Rage Against the War Machine rally, and she put our logo on it. And then when she was confronted for having CPI, many times she said, well, they may be communists, but they have the right to participate. They have the right to be there. And then she even came on this YouTube channel. She invited us to the Libertarian Party's national convention and arranged for me to go in to Trump's speech at the Libertarian Party convention. This is huge. Well, Angela McArdle just stepped down as chair of the Libertarian Party because next week she is going to be appointed to serve in Donald Trump's cabinet. Did you all hear that? Somebody who's been on this YouTube channel, somebody who organized a protest, Rage Against the War Machine, that we participated in and loudly defended. Somebody who invited us to the Libertarian Party convention and gave us, red carpet all-star treatment, got me press credentials to get into Donald Trump's speech. That person is going to be in the executive branch of the government, right? I'm telling you, our organization is on fire right now. Center for Political Innovation, right? That stopped a riot on Inauguration Day. We got Tulsi Gabbard, who listens to us, is about to become the director of national intelligence. We got Angela McArdle, who knows us very well, and I consider to be my friend, is about to serve in the Trump administration. Folks, shit's getting real. We're doing real stuff. They showed us on Radio Free Europe, and it's happening, folks. We are right in the middle of stuff, right? We are right in the middle of a very, very important fight that I laid out. I wrote a whole book explaining exactly what's going on. Where is America going? Marxism, MAGA, and the coming revolution. You can read exactly about what's happening. And this is all, we are right where we need to be, right? And I'm telling you, if you're in the Center for Political Innovation, you are in the fight. We were in court with the Uhuru movement. We were outside the courthouse giving press statements in support of the Uhuru movement on the day their trial opened, and also on the day that they were sentenced. We were in Florida supporting the Uhuru movement. We were at the center of their defense. We have been at the center of doing peace MAGA outreach and championing peace on the Korean Peninsula. We're in the middle of the struggle. We're doing it. We're out there in LA helping people and confronting the Falun Gong. We are everywhere. The Center for Political Innovation, if you are in the Center for Political Innovation, you are doing anti-imperialism, okay? And there is a big division in the ruling class, and there's a big division within the FBI and the deep state right now, and we are in the middle of that fight, putting forward an anti-imperialist, anti-globalist program. And there's other people that are screwing around on the internet and playing dress up and, they're commies, all right? We're doing it for real. So if you join our organization, you're doing it for real. You are doing it for real if you join our organization. You are in the middle of the fight against globalism, imperialism, the fight to build a new America for working families. We are on fire. And what's next? Well, the next big thing we got coming up, hold on. As I mentioned before, we're having our workshop that is taking place in Minneapolis. I hope that you come. It's going to be a great all-day workshop. And then heading into this summer, We are planning to have the biggest event we have ever done. We are going to gather 400 people in Chicago for an all-day anti-imperialist rally. And that is set to take place on July 12th, 2025. And we need a crew of people to come to town to help out with that rally and do everything. So we are having a 7-day program from July 9th to July 16th for people that are dedicated volunteers. More information is coming out about that soon. We are building a real anti-imperialist, anti-globalist movement. We're in the middle of the struggle, and we're doing it. We're doing anti-imperialism. And now Donald Trump just had his representative. Now, we understand, so this is what happened, right? Grinnell went to Venezuela and met with Maduro. Right? And this meeting happened, according to Dulce Rodriguez, the vice president of Venezuela. They talked about the political integrity of Venezuela's political system. And they made an agreement, basically, that the USA wasn't going to continue interfering and trying to destabilize Venezuela's political system. They returned the 6 Americans who were arrested in Venezuela for trying to overthrow the Venezuelan government. And the USA has agreed to return and the Venezuelan criminals who were fighting against Maduro from the gang. They are going to be flown back to Venezuela to go to prison in Venezuela. And Venezuela is going to put the what is it called, the gang that's been terrorizing people, the anti-Maduro gang that came to the United States. They're headed back to Venezuela to go to prison in Venezuela. And this is very, very exciting. And Nicolas Maduro said, after Donald Trump faced an attempted assassination, he said who did it. He said that attempted assassination came from the American pro-war establishment, the same people who killed Kennedy. Maduro said that very much. And Maduro made it clear that he was willing to negotiate with Trump. Then Anya Parampil revealed that Trump wanted to meet with Maduro and negotiate with Maduro back in his first term, and that Mike Pompeo and John Bolton prevented it from happening, just like they ruined the peace talks on the Korean Peninsula. But now Mike Pompeo and John Bolton have had their security credentials stripped away, right? They have been booted out of the intelligence community. And now Trump is looking to make peace with Venezuela. This is really, really exciting, folks. We are at the beginning of a very, very, very exciting moment. It looks like RFK is going to get confirmed. It looks like Tulsi Gabbard is going to get confirmed. It looks like Angela McCardle is going to be appointed to the Trump administration. We are in a really, really, really important moment, right? The imperialist intelligence apparatus, the Eastern establishment is crumbling. And in this moment, the movement that is needed to build a new anti-imperialist America is gaining ground. This is a really, really exciting time. And I am just so proud of what we are doing. So I've got a few other things I wanted to talk about tonight before we start answering people's questions. I see there's one super chat that has already come in. But please keep the super chat questions rolling in. I need something to talk about in the second half of the show. I see that Hemp Car sent in a Rumble rant, but yeah, more super chats, more Rumble rants. Give me something to talk about in the second half of the program. But this is a really, really exciting time that we are living in. Our movement is having a big impact. We are in the game. We're opposing imperialism, and the woke left is left behind. The woke left is just completely left behind. We are moving ahead. We are marching forward, and it is so sad. It is so sad. I'll just say this, and then we'll move on to the other things I wanted to talk about. But, I watched the woke left. The woke left were the worst friends the anti-imperialist countries could ever have. For the longest time, the Syrians were meeting. I was in the Workers' World Party. I was in the International Action Center, and they were saying, the American government is funding Al-Qaeda. The same people who attacked you on 9/11 are terrorizing Syria. Bring that up. And I sat in the meetings where Joe Eisbacher from Freedom Road Socialist Organization and Sarah Flounders from the Workers' World Party said, we can't say that. That's Islamophobic. And they're telling the Syrians are saying, your government is funding the very same people who attacked you on 9/11 to destroy our country. Bring that up. Show the American people how wrong that is. We can't say that. That's Islamophobic. We like Al-Qaeda. They are brown people who attacked America. it's racist to say Al-Qaeda is bad. I mean, it was like, I couldn't believe it. The woke left are like the worst friends that Syria ever had, right? I mean, it's like an obvious talking point. You did a poll. You went around, hey, should our government fund Al-Qaeda to overthrow a government? 99% of Americans would say no. However, the woke left could never, no, we're going to make it about, America's a racist, evil country and Syria are a bunch, it's like they always found a way. It was like they were so used to being losers. They're so used to losing, right? They're so used to losing. They can't make strong arguments. Here's another great example, right? So after the White Helmets, which was this propaganda group, that made propaganda against the Syrian government. After they had an event in Union, what is it called? The Grand Central Station. And, they had like an orchestra playing something to support the White Helmets. And so the Workers' World Party was going to protest it. And the common sense thing to do would be bring a sign, stop supporting Al-Qaeda, or the White Helmets, are covering up for Al-Qaeda. They couldn't do that. So the sign that they brought to this event, it said, U.S. out of everywhere. Well, most Americans don't understand that the USA was involved in Syria to begin with. The whole argument about Syria is that the USA should be there because Assad is killing his own people with chemical weapons. They're just running around, U.S. out of everywhere. No one had any clue what they were talking about because it had to be politically correct. You can't talk about Al-Qaeda. That's racist. I mean, it was nuts. And I just saw them. They were the worst friends the Syrians ever had, right? And I mean, part of the reason I think the Syrian government fell is because the communist groups were more committed to fighting Donald Trump and fighting against racist white Americans who are racist. They were more committed to that than they were to standing with the Syrian Arab Republic. Here's this country, this socialist country, Syria, that's under attack by imperialism. And the woke left they hate Americans more than they support anti-imperialist countries. I mean, that's really what it gets down to, right? You can't make an argument that a normal person would be able to be convinced by if you're on the woke left, all right? You just can't do it. Well, Tulsi Gabbard did. Tulsi Gabbard got up there and she said, no, the new president of Syria, since we overthrew their government, is a guy who danced and celebrated 9/11. This is wrong, right? None of the communist groups would ever say that because they all have woke brain. That's why. And I'm just telling you, so breaking out of wokeism and building a real patriotic, working class, anti-globalist, anti-imperialist movement that stands in solidarity with the BRICS countries and the new economy, wants a new economy for America to unleash human growth and creativity. We're doing something utterly amazing. We are standing up to woke fascism. And this revolution, and it's not a social revolution. The economic system of the United States is not changing, right? We're still, in our economic system, we're still an imperialist, globalist economy. The economy hasn't changed, but the change that is happening within the power structure, the political revolution happening, and there is a political revolution happening right now, right? The FBI is getting a kick in the teeth. The CIA is getting a kick in the teeth. The fact that the head of American intelligence is going to be one of the harshest critics of U.S. foreign policy and U.S. support for radical Islamic terrorists around the world. The fact that the head of the FBI is going to be one of the FBI's biggest critics, one of the biggest defenders of civil liberties, Kash Patel. The fact that RFK, one of the biggest critics of Big Pharma and their lies and the censorship to cover up Big Pharma's lies, is going to be the head of the Department of Health and Human Services. I mean, this is big. This is a political revolution, and we're on the winning side of that revolution. We decided that we saw what side the FBI was on. We saw what side the Pentagon and the CIA were on, and we saw what side Big Pharma was on, and we joined the other side. Whereas all the communist groups, they're going down with the FBI. They're going down with the CIA. They're going down with the Pentagon, and let them, let them sink, right? That may just be the most immature thing I ever did on a stream. I've never stuck out my tongue before, but right, just let them go down, right? They signed up. The Communist Party USA, they signed up with the FBI and they're sinking, right? the Party of Socialism and Liberation and the Workers' World Party and all these groups, they signed up. They signed up to be on the same side as the FBI, the same side as the CIA, and they're sinking because average working class Americans who love God and love their country and hate globalism, imperialism, and hate having their civil liberties taken away, and hate the danger of a new world war, and hate the emerging low-wage police state. Average Americans are not going to take this anymore. They're not going to take this anymore. And the communist groups, they all gave up on the working class and they signed up for wokeism. And now they are going down in flames. And we made the right decision as CPI to not go down in flames with them, but to join the movement of the people that is going to defeat them. And I am so proud of the work that we are doing right now. We are doing amazing work. We are doing amazing work, and we're on the winning team, and the communists and the socialists are on the losing team. And they deserve it. They absolutely deserve it. We know which way the wind is blowing. We know who fights for American working families. We know what's wrong and who the FBI is. We know who the deep state and the global imperialist George Soros intelligence apparatus is, and we are against it, and we're on the winning team. And this is a moment of great opportunity for those of us who want a new America for working families. And I am so excited. I am so excited. And I'm so proud of the Center for Political Innovation. And I must say that if you want to be on the winning team, you need to sign up and join CPI. You need to sign up and join the Center for Political Innovation, because we are kicking ass right now. We are kicking ass and taking names, right? We are winning, and you need to join us. You need to join us, because the sky is the limit. And right now, because of the divisions in the ruling class, and because of the situation, we're on the winning team, and the fighting is going to get more intense, and our relevance as an organization is going to become more and more and more. This is very, very exciting times. So I got a few more things I wanted to share with you all tonight. Few more things. This is the first one I wanted to share with you all. The Cuban president, Diaz-Canel, he recently gave a speech about Cuba and its struggle against imperialism. And this is a real communist, right? This is not a woke leftist. I mean, Cuba, they got gay marriage, sure. They're pretty progressive, but Cuba, they have built a working class planned economy. And they are aligned with Venezuela. They're aligned with Russia and China. They also have a big market sector, a lot of small business owners. Cuba is the kind of socialism that we can admire, right? They've changed over the years. They've moved away from the old Soviet model of doing things, but they've maintained an economy that puts the needs of the Cuban people first. And this is their president explaining what the Cuban perspective. This is how real communists talk. You'll notice he doesn't say white privilege one time. He doesn't say income inequality at any point, right? This is what a real anti-globalist, anti-imperialist, pro-working families leader sounds like. And I just wanted to play you. This is Cuban President Diaz-Canel.
El orden internacional, nacido del fin de la Segunda Guerra Mundial, que en buena medida es el que hoy prevalece, es heredero del colonialismo, de la historia de explotación, saqueo y esclavitud que enriqueció un conjunto específico de potencias coloniales y sus sociedades a costa del sufrimiento, el desarraigo, la destrucción, la sumisión y el subdesarrollo de los antiguos territorios colonizados. El imperio como sistema de dominación no es un fenómeno nuevo. Sin embargo, la era de la globalización neoliberal ha tomado formas más sofisticadas y menos visibles. Ya no se trata únicamente de la ocupación territorial directa, aunque esta sigue como práctica vigente, como sufren en carne propia los heroicos hermanos palestinos. Se manifiesta también en el control de mercados, recursos naturales, cadenas de suministro y sobre todo de la tecnología y la información. Las oligarquías que hoy dominan el mundo no solo acumulan riqueza, sino que concentran poder político, cultural y social, perpetuando un beneficio que favorece a unos pocos a expensas de muchos. Las grandes corporaciones industriales, los conglomerados financieros y los gigantes tecnológicos han tejido una red de influencia que trasciende fronteras. Sus decisiones afectan la vida de millones de personas, desde el acceso a medicamentos hasta la privacidad de nuestros datos. Estas élites no solo buscan maximizar su ganancia, sino también consolidar su hegemonía, imponiendo estándares y normas que perpetúan la dependencia de lo que crecientemente se reconoce como el sur global. Si bien se abolió el colonialismo casi absolutamente en la segunda mitad del siglo XX, sus condiciones y rezagos han prevalecido con nuevas modalidades. Esa es la esencia del orden internacional actual y explica la realidad inaceptable de que la brecha entre los países desarrollados y los subdesarrollados tiende a ensancharse, lejos de estrecharse, sin perspectivas de que cambie esa tendencia. Sobran los documentos, declaraciones, discursos y resoluciones de las Naciones Unidas y sus agencias que describen ese escenario. Las propuestas de cómo responder y qué hacer tienen ya una historia que data por lo menos de la década de 1960 del siglo pasado. Se conoce bien que la posibilidad de un cambio y la perspectiva de un orden internacional más justo y sostenible han encontrado la férrea resistencia de las grandes potencias económicas y militares, representativas en gran medida de las antiguas potencias coloniales. Las naciones en desarrollo, y en especial sus pueblos, tienen derecho a soñar que un mundo mejor es posible y tienen el derecho y el deber a luchar por él.
Yeah, that was great. And that speech basically laid it out there. He talked about the rule of the world by huge multinational corporations that are keeping countries in poverty, neoliberal globalization, big multinational corporations that control information and control industries and control natural resources and keep countries underdeveloped. That was an excellent speech. It was an excellent speech. And that is what real anti-imperialists and real anti-globalists, that's how they talk. And if you gave a speech like that, the Party of Socialism and Liberation would expel you. Because there was nothing about white privilege in there. There was nothing about certain whatever their favorite oppressed minority is, right? It was against globalism. That's anti-Semitic, right? Globalism, that means Jews. That's what that means. I've heard you can't say globalism, right? Because that's secretly code for Jew. You can't say finance because that's secretly code for Jew. I mean, it's ridiculous. The woke left has nothing to do with what they believe in Cuba. It has nothing to do with what they believe in Nicaragua. It has nothing to do with what they believe in Venezuela. It has nothing to do with what they believe in Iran. It has nothing to do with what the Palestinians believe, with what the Houthis in Yemen believe, with what the Chinese believe, with what the Russians believe. It has nothing to do with what the North Koreans believe. The woke left that believes in degrowth and Malthusianism, that wants to drive down the population, the woke left that was so angry that Donald Trump got elected that they were planning to stage a riot because they were so upset that the regime change wars might not continue and that the funding for Ukraine might get cut off. The woke left that is mad about Trump, weakening the FBI. The woke left that couldn't even stand with the African People's Socialist Party and Chairman O'Malley. A group of black revolutionaries had their homes raided by the FBI and were facing years in prison. And the woke left couldn't defend them and couldn't stand with them because they heard some stupid rumors on the internet. The woke left has nothing to do with anti-globalism, anti-imperialism. It has nothing to do with them. Okay. And I mean, it's just, we have to be real about this. The woke left has nothing to do with anti-imperialism, nothing to do with the new BRICS economy, nothing to do with the socialist governments around the world. It has nothing to do with them. The woke left, promoting degrowth and keeping countries in poverty, promoting Malthusianism and bloodthirsty, ruthless imperialist theories about overpopulation and limited resources that keep countries in poverty. The woke left that supports the FBI. The woke left that threw Uhuru under the bus. The woke left that was planning a riot because they were so mad that Donald Trump might cut off the money to the Nazis in Ukraine, might dare negotiate with North Korea. The woke left are the enemy. They are absolutely the enemy, and they are on the wrong side. And we're on the right side. And there's a lot of confusion on the side that we're on. This revolution, political revolution right now against the imperialist deep state, it's very confused. And there's a lot of very, very confusing things happening. This is not a social revolution. The United States is not moving toward a new economic system. This is just a huge overhaul. USAID is shut down. Their website doesn't even work. Aid to Ukraine has been cut off. The security clearances of all the neocon war hawks and the people who conspired against Trump have been lifted. The January 6th inmates have been released. This is a huge overhaul. We are living under a huge overhaul. This is a Bonapartist overhaul, and it's a good development. But we have an important role to play because ultimately, if they're going to win, the only way that the FBI can be defeated, the only way that the imperialist monopolies can be defeated is we need a new economy. And we need an economy where the needs of American working families come first and where profits are not in command. But the banks and the factories and the industries are organized to serve public good and not the profits of a wealthy few. We ultimately need a government of action to fight for working families, a government that will break the power of the big monopolies and reorganize the U.S. economy to be part of the new BRICS anti-imperialist economy that's rising around the world, and to rationally organize and plan for economic growth. That is what we ultimately need. And the overwhelming majority of people that are part of this political upsurge that is breaking the power of the imperialist state, breaking the power of the big monopolies. It's very exciting, but the overwhelming majority of the people in this political upsurge don't understand that. And they think that if they just deregulate everything and they just completely cut the jobs of government workers and just get the government out, that magically everything will be okay. Well, they're going to learn a hard lesson. And Donald Trump is going to learn pretty soon. I think he's already figured out to some degree that the only way that he's going to be able to really stop the forces that are out to get him is he's going to have to build a mass movement. That's why we exist. We are going to be part of that mass movement. We are going to build the anti-monopoly coalition. That's what we're going to do. We are going to build the anti-monopoly coalition. And it's going to be difficult, but we are going to do it. And the role that we have to play is going to become more and more important. And I'm very, very, very excited about the future of our organization. I'm very excited about it. Got a couple more things to say. First things first, right? I've noticed what's going on with the deportations right now. Now, it seems like for the most part, they are deporting people who've been convicted of violent crimes. However, they're scooping up a lot of other people who are undocumented in the process. And my position, I certainly am not opposed to deporting violent criminals, but my position has long been that ultimately the solution to the crisis of mass migration is economic development. First things first, we got to be clear about the fact that the crisis of mass migration is not good. And the woke liberals who think it's a good thing that they find dead bodies along the Mexican border every day, think it's a good thing that millions of people can't live in their own country and flee drug gangs and poverty to come to this country. No, that's not the American dream. No, that's not some great situation. The wave of mass migration that is driving down the wages of American workers, that is creating an issue of crime in certain parts of the country, it's not good. And the fact that the woke left refuses to acknowledge that and says that if you point that out, you're racist, they're wrong. However, that said, all the things that conservatives generally advocate as a solution to the crisis of mass migration tend to make things worse, right? We all know that among immigrant communities, crime is a very serious problem. Well, the worst thing you could ever do is make immigrant communities afraid to call the police. If immigrant communities aren't able to call the police because they're afraid they're going to get deported, groups like MS-13 are going to gain strength, right? So we need immigrant communities to be willing to cooperate with the police against those gangs. And so you can't terrorize immigrant communities. Second of all, on top of that, right, is it legal to pay an immigrant less than minimum wage? No. It is illegal to pay anyone in America who works for a living less than a minimum wage. But immigrant workers, the reason that they drive wages down is they get paid less than minimum wage because they're in the shadows. They're hiding. Well, it's illegal. And so what we need is to create an atmosphere where immigrants can step up and say, no, you can't pay me less than minimum wage. And if we're going to have a situation where immigrants are demanding that they get paid a fair wage, then they won't be able to drive down the wages. But if immigrant workers are afraid of being deported, they're not going to step up. They're not going to tell on their employer who pays them less than minimum wage. They're not going to demand fair treatment on the job, right? And so we need to not terrorize immigrant communities so that they can step up and demand fair pay, and they don't drive wages down. The more the terrorized the immigrant community is, the more they're in the shadows, the less pay they'll be willing to work for, the more employers are going to be able to pay them less and less, and the more they'll drive wages down. Ultimately, the solution to the crisis of mass migration is economic development. We need Nicaragua and the United States and China to team up to develop Central America. We need what we've talked about in the past, the Sandino-Zapata Economic Corridor. We need high-speed railway connecting the United States to Mexico City, to Nicaragua. We need a huge expansion of economic development all throughout Central and North America. We need an economic corridor so that people in Mexico and people in Guatemala and Honduras and Panama have economic opportunity and jobs and education and stuff. And so they don't get involved in drug gangs and they don't feel a need to leave their country because they have new opportunities. Economic development. You do not solve the problem of drug gangs with bombs and guns and tanks, or with walls, or with police raids kicking down the doors in the middle of the night. The way you solve problems of drug gangs, problems of mass migration, problems of economic refugees or political refugees is with economic development. And that is the road to peace in the world. When countries trade with each other, they're not likely to go to war with each other. And that is the solution to many of the problems that we face, right? I am really into Wallace Wattles, the great self-help guru, New Thought socialist. And he talks about how we should not view the world as flawed. We shouldn't view the world as evil or going to hell. The world is not going to hell. The world is going to God. However, it's working out the problems, right? And that it's gradually improving as the world goes along, right? And that human creativity is the expression of God within all of us, and that human history is marching forward, and the human population is expanding, and we are inventing new things, we are growing, and this is a process, the process of growth. And the way these problems that we see, problems like poverty, problems like unemployment, problems like child abuse, problems like violence and crime, the way these problems are resolved is by human beings growing and expanding and trading, and growth is the answer. Life, expansion, growth, opportunity, creation, not destruction. That is the way these problems get resolved. And that growth is good. Economic opportunity is good. Innovation and creativity is good. This is how problems are solved. And the problem of mass migration will be solved with economic growth and with expansion and with new opportunities being created and countries bonding and trading with each other on the basis of win-win cooperation. The answer is growth and human creativity and the world working itself out and getting beyond and becoming more perfect every day, moving toward that higher state of perfection. That is the answer. That is the answer. Go read some Wallace Wattles. Go read The Science of Getting Rich. Go read The Science of Being Great. Go and read The New Christ. Go read Jesus, the Man and His Works. This was a good friend of Eugene Debs. This was a revolutionary socialist in 1900 who wrote a book about how wealth is good and about how innovation and creativity are the beautiful thing within human beings, and how ultimately we're going to see a whole new world where poverty is eliminated, and the road to getting there is learning to think and awakening the human mind and the human spirit and unleashing our creative power. You've got to go read Wallace Wattles. You've got to go read Wallace Wattles. Creativity and human growth and expansion. This is the way to do it. There is no limit to growth. There is no limit to the amazing thing that human beings can do. We are moving in a good direction, and the forces of pessimism and destruction that are trying to roll back the wheels of history, trying to incite us against each other, telling us there's too many people in the world, telling us that humanity is evil, right? That is not the way. And ultimately, human beings, with our creativity and our brilliance, we are going to overcome this irrational system where profits come before people. We're going to overcome the irrationality of globalism and imperialism. We're going to build a whole new world. And I'm really, really excited about what we are doing. Really, really excited about it. We're going to build a government of action that fights for working families. And I am so, so excited about what we're going to do. So I wanted to get that out of my system. And that said, wanted to just throw this out there, right? Angela McCurdle, she just stepped down as Libertarian Party chair. We had a chat on this YouTube channel, and she's a brilliant person. The Libertarian Party has been around for a long time, but it's been kind of a fringe, irrelevant group that runs in elections, makes some interesting points. This year, the Libertarian Party made itself count. Donald Trump, the presidential candidate, spoke at their convention. They got one of their party members freed from prison, Ross Ulbricht. They're going to have somebody from their party who's going to be in the Trump administration. And Angela McCurdle, when I talked with Angela McCurdle, and this is related to what I was saying about the immigration issue. When I was talking to Angela McCurdle, one thing we both agreed on is that the problem with social media is that social media is very good at triggering people's emotions and activating people's trauma. It is. It absolutely is. And that we agreed, I as a communist, she as a libertarian, we agreed that gulag memes are not funny, that helicopter memes are not funny, Holocaust jokes are not funny, right? And that it's true. In communist circles, for the longest time, people have been joking about gulags. Well, folks, I got to tell you, go and read the work. No one is more of a defender of Joseph Stalin than Dr. Grover Furr. And Dr. Grover Furr, he's a friend. I've interviewed him before. I've been to his house in New Jersey before years ago. He wrote this book, Khrushchev Lied. He's a huge supporter of Stalin. And even he admits in this book that there were thousands and thousands of people who went to gulags who shouldn't have been there, who were turned in falsely, right? And so, and that, Stalin eventually executed the head of the Russian security services at the time, Yezhov. And so if Grover Furr can admit that there were thousands of people in the Soviet gulags who didn't belong there, that's fucked up. How would you feel if one of your relatives had been in a Soviet labor camp, right? They hadn't done anything wrong, but there was an episode of mass hysteria and their neighbors turned them in and they ended up in a gulag. Would you think that was funny? No, it's not fucking funny. It's not funny, right? It's not funny. Sure, we can admit there were a lot of Nazi spies in the Soviet Union at the time, and we can admit the way Stalin's been demonized is not good. But even Stalin's biggest supporter will tell you there were all kinds of people, thousands and thousands and thousands of innocent people in those gulags who shouldn't have been there. And the problem of innocent people being persecuted during the Great Terror of 1937 was so intense that the head of the KGB got the death penalty. So even he admits that. We should not be joking about gulags. It's not funny. It's an awful, awful thing that happened in Russia's history. It was an awful thing. Now, it wasn't a Holocaust. There were no gas chambers in the gulags, right? These were work camps, but it was wrong, and it's not funny. It's not funny. And when we make gulag memes, most people who don't share our perspective, most people that don't know about the history, don't see things, they look at that and they are triggered. And they think about how awful it was. And especially if they had a relative who went to one or whatever, they're triggered. It's not helpful. And the same goes for those helicopter memes, libertarians. For years, I was very triggered by those helicopter memes, right? Yeah, well, you took the words out of my mouth, David. I was triggered by them because I know I have been at many events where survivors of the Pinochet regime have spoken. I know people, right? There was a woman who had, lung problems because she was in a prison camp in Chile that I knew. And I know the song about Victor Jara and how his body was, how he was tortured to death. This beautiful folk singer who was a socialist folk singer from Chile was tortured to death. And the stadium where they rounded people up. There was somebody I worked with years ago whose father was a college professor in Pinochet's Chile and ended up going to prison. And he ended up visiting his father from prison. He was raised by his grandmother because his father was in prison. It's not fucking funny. Right? And libertarians are like, I'm going to put you in a helicopter. It's not fucking funny. It's not, right? And, just like it's gulag memes are not funny, right? The same goes for helicopter memes. It's not funny. The idea that there were brutal authoritarian military regimes in South America that rounded up communists and socialists and dissidents and put them in helicopters and threw them out of the helicopters. It's not fucking funny. It's not funny. And for years, I've hated libertarians. I've just seethed at libertarians because they make those memes. But then I have to admit, there's probably lots of libertarians that have seethed at me, and people that I knew who made gulag memes. It's not this internet edgelord thing. I'm going to offend you and then make fun of you for being offended. It's really immature. It's really unprofessional. It's really childish. And if you're a serious political organizer, you don't do that shit. If you're a stupid teenager, right, and it's like, I'm going to say the N-word. Oh, look at the look on their faces, right? That's how a lot of stupid teenagers act. But if you're a serious political organizer, if you want to really change the world, you can't act that way. You can't do gulag memes. You can't do helicopter memes. You can't make jokes about the Holocaust, right? Again, right? The Holocaust, right? Is it awful the way Israel invokes the Holocaust to do what they do? Is it awful? Absolutely. Absolutely. What happened in the Holocaust does not justify what Israel does. But that said, is the Holocaust funny? No. Is the Holocaust not a serious thing? Of course it is. It's a very serious thing. And no Holocaust jokes. Do not joke about the Holocaust. It's a horrendous thing that happened in history. Do not make memes about gulags. Do not talk about helicopters. None of this is funny. And that we've got to get out of this messed up. Look, all of this is a symptom. It's all a symptom of the fact that so many people think all they can ever be is an internet complainer. Right? And I am here to tell you, you don't have to be old man that yells at cloud. And that is what Holocaust jokes and gulag memes and helicopter memes are, is people think, hey, all I can ever be is somebody on the internet being annoying. And so why not say something that offends other people? Why not, act like an asshole? Why not offend people? Why not bully people? Why not trigger people? Why not, right? I'm just on the internet. This is all I'm ever going to be, is an old man yelling at a cloud, right? Well, I am here to tell you that you don't have to just be an old man yelling at a cloud. You can change the world. I believe in you. My job is to help you find the power within yourself, to show you what you can do. You are not powerless. You can change the world. Look at what CPI has done. If you look at all that we have done as a small organization, it's really empowering. And that's what Noah, one of our members out in Boston, he talked about. He said, it's amazing to see how much power we really have. You have power. You can change the world. And you need to act like it. You need to act like it. You need to act like you're important. You need to act like people can change their views based on what you tell them. You need to act like you can be in the government someday. If Angela McCardle Our friend, if she can be in Trump's administration, who's to say that 8 years from now, 4 years from now, there can't be a CPI member in Trump's administration or in the new administration that comes in? Who's to say? We should act like it. If you don't act like you're going to win, you're going to lose. But if you act like you can win, you can win. You need to dress like a winner. You need to think like a winner. You need to aim high. You need to aim high, and you need to be professional, right? We need serious political organizers, people who have self-esteem, people who can look themselves in the mirror and be proud of who they are, people who say what they mean and mean what they say, people who would never joke about a horrendous event, a horrendous tragedy, people who would never say stupid things just to trigger other people so they can go, ha ha, I triggered the libs, I triggered the conservatives, No, we need people to be mature and professional and not fall into the trap of virtue signaling. I have said so many times, I have never once, I've been to many memorial services and funerals in my life. I have never once been to one where the minister or the eulogizer came out and said, everyone, Bob may be dead, but we will never forget that time when he was right on the internet. Yes, there were many times where Bob was right on the internet. He said something, he said exactly the right thing, and everyone else was wrong, but Bob was right on the internet. Sure, he never left his home. Sure, he never went outside. Sure, he never accomplished anything, but he was right on the internet, and Bob will live on. He shall live on because he was right upon the internet. There was the day when Bob tweeted the thing that made him better than everyone else, and that's what we shall always remember him for. I've never once been to a funeral where that is ever said. And if you ever go to a funeral and you hear about how Bob was right on the internet, if you ever go to a funeral and you hear such a thing, by all means tell me, because I have never once been to a funeral where that was the case. Virtue signaling is cheap and worthless. People judge you by what you get done. Your impact on the world is by what you accomplish. It's by how many lives you can change, how many people you can bring together to get real shit done, how many people you can teach things they did not know, how many people who've been in the darkness and you've shown them the light, how many people that you've gotten to think in a way that they never would have thought before. That is how you change the world, not by being right on the internet, not by virtue signaling. Okay? And we have got to get beyond the virtue signaling culture. We have got to get beyond it, and we have got to push back against it. We have absolutely got to push back against it. If we're going to build a new America for working families, we need to create a crew of people that understand that changing the world is about teaching people to think. It's about acting in a professional way. It is about aiming high and acting in a serious way, bringing people together to get real shit done, not being pure and correct online. Okay? And that's why we're doing these 7-day workshops. Folks, this isn't just a YouTube channel. This is a movement. Center for Political Innovation is a movement that we are building. That's why we're doing the 7-day workshop. We are doing a workshop that is designed to change your life, to teach you how to be an organizer, to take you from being somebody who might just agree with our ideas or might really like what we've done, and to be somebody who is inflamed with passion and ability to change the world. We want to take you and take all your potential that you have within you and find it and turn you into a brilliant, revolutionary, anti-globalist, anti-imperialist activist and organizer, to make you a professional, to make you somebody who could sit in the halls of Congress someday, to make you somebody who can organize a rally of thousands of people to stand up against a new world war and to stand up for justice and for working families, someone who's a beloved leader of their community. That is what I am trying to do. That's why we have the 7-day workshop coming up. And after the 7-day workshop is over, there's going to be a graduation ceremony for everyone who gets through the 7-day workshop. It's going to be an important ceremony because you will have learned. You learn by doing. If you want to change things, you've got to learn things. And if you want to learn things, you've got to change things. You learn by leading, and you lead by learning. And this is the point. This is the point. This is the point. And that is what we are trying to do. And, you know, I'm not a libertarian. I believe we need a centrally planned economy. You know, we need a centrally planned economy. But that said, Angela McCardle, she gave a very powerful speech when she was leaving office. Her farewell speech as a libertarian was about all the problems that they have faced in the libertarian community that they've faced. And I want to actually just put her farewell address from the Libertarian Party on. Because there's a lot there, and I'm going to put it on, and I'm going to refill my water because my throat is getting dry while I put it on. And then I'm going to tell you what I took from this speech. And then after that, we'll do the roll call, and I'll start answering people's questions. So, but listen very closely to this speech, because it's a really well put together speech that she gave about how hard it has been to lead the Libertarian Party. There's somebody this is a person I really, really look up to and respect, Angela, because she has dealt with a lot of the same toxicity that we've done, but she has accomplished a lot by building the Rage Against the War Machine rally, etc. So listen to what Angela says here. I'm going to give you my reaction to it afterwards, and we'll go from there. So, all right.
Hello, everyone. We are live. And it looks like my audio settings are good. So, I think it's Friday. I'm still working furiously to finish out a whole bunch of tasks. I am the outgoing chair of the Libertarian Party, and I'd like to share some of our greatest accomplishments with you today. I'd like to encourage you, to edify you, to issue some warnings and cautions, and to give you advice on how to keep succeeding in the future. We, as the Libertarian Party, just achieved the biggest political victory in the history of the party. We saved Ross Ulbricht's life, and we did it in a very public way. Now, I have heard from Ross's mother, but I have not heard from Ross. I know a lot of people have been asking about that. I think he needs some time to himself, and we should respect that. It's no joke for a nonviolent, innocent person to go to maximum security prison with all manner of murderers and thugs, for 11 years. So I'm very glad he's out, and we'll give him some peace and respect his privacy. We were recognized by the President of the United States 36 hours into his term, which is pretty incredible. We hosted that same president at our national convention, along with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Vivek Ramaswamy, Tulsi Gabbard, Nicole Shanahan, Thomas Massey, Kash Patel, Mike Lee. It was an incredible event. I'm very proud of that. During my tenure, we held all kinds of amazing events. Rescue the Republic, which was our biggest outreach event, as far as I know, in the party's history. At least it was planned and coordinated with the party. Rage Against the War Machine, which I'm so glad to have worked with Nick Brana and members of the Dissident Left on. The first anti-war rally specifically aimed at opposing the United States involvement in the war in Ukraine, and possibly the catalyst for reigniting the entire anti-war movement after a period of more than 10 years of silence. We have built incredible relationships in the Libertarian Party under my leadership. RFK Jr., who is a lifetime member of the LP, Kash Patel, who was our guest speaker at Freedom Fest, Brett Weinstein, who was also our guest speaker at Freedom Fest, Tulsi Gabbard, a guest speaker at Rage Against the War Machine, Thomas Massey, a guest at our convention, Mike Lee, a guest speaker at our convention. There's just been a lot of incredible relationships built. Robert Breedlove, Dr. Peter McCullough, we're grateful for all of the attention that you've given us. Roger Ver, Julian Assange, whatever work we've been able to do to advocate on your behalf, I'm very grateful and happy that I was able to do that. And of course, Ross Ulbricht. What's really incredible is I can call up a lot of these people, and I'd like to be able to transfer these relationships over to the next chair. And that's one of the reasons that I've endorsed Michael Heiss to take my place. I believe there needs to be continuity and a strong relationship in the narrative. Politics at this level are relational. They're not transactional. And there is no recognition or transaction without a carefully cultivated relationship. Now, Michael Heiss is our founder. He is the visionary. It makes sense that he should lead us. He's been on staff. He understands how party operations work, which is very critical. The learning curve for chair is very steep. And I will probably talk about that a little bit more later on. Competency in RONAR and meetings and reports do not make an effective chair. Vision, thick skin, diplomacy, wisdom, and the ability to take risks are what make a good chair. Consensus building, driving things forward. It's my intention to work closely with staff over the next 2 weeks as I go out and to have a smooth transition. That's what is best for the organization. I hope that I will also have a smooth transition with our next chair. Now, there is a theory that if the LNC has a chair that draws a little less ire from our haters and critics, that things will be smoother. And that is false. The nature of this party, unfortunately, is that there is no stability ever. The big tent of the party has assured that. When the Koch brothers left the party in the early 1980s, it was the same way. You cannot put multiple groups of people who hate each other and have oppositional ideas all under the same tent and expect there to be peace. There will be no peace in an organization with that big of a tent and a bottom-up structure. It is what it is, right? And that's a situation that we all walk into as we come to chair the party. If the LNC were to install a placeholder chair or a smooth things over chair or a hater chair, the opposition will immediately increase their demands. They ask for a seat at the table. They flex on the LNC, and then the Mises dominant LNC has to either fight them or capitulate. And if they capitulate, then all of you, the MC, their allies, the anti-woke people, the people who don't want to be neoliberals, the principled anti-war people, the people who aren't crazy, or cowardly, you get angry and the LNC will have to fight you. And the fighting will never end until you can make some major changes to the bylaws, which I might recommend to you on a later date. And I don't want it to sound like it's a giant exercise in futility. It's not. Because by slogging it out in internal fights and drama, you enabled me to swing my brass balls around and deliver a win at the federal level and save a libertarian's life. You all helped free Ross Ulbricht. Every supporter of mine, every boots on the ground organizer mattered. Every call you made to get people to show up at convention, every dollar you spent on yourself, having to be there, paying for someone else who was a little bit broke, getting people to state conventions, slogging it through some of these miserable internal fights. Every single action mattered. Every vote you stayed on the floor for mattered. Your blood, sweat, and tears made all of this possible, and I am eternally grateful to you, and you deserve a chair that will work closely with you and acknowledge your contributions and give you the credit and outcomes that you deserve. I will not abandon you. I will continue to be a party member, to be a caucus member, and to champion you and to be a mentor. I will network for you. I will work to advance legislation for you. I will lobby to get more libertarians free, as I am lobbying right now for Roger Ver, Lauren Chen, and many other people who have reached out to me desperate for help, desperate to get their loved ones out of prison, to get themselves out of legal trouble, and so on and so forth. And again, I can't state enough how important your contributions are that have allowed me to get to that point. I will continue to lift up our mission to advance liberty, PDR, and to slash the federal government. Everything we do must be in service to the mission, not in service to our egos, not in service to the ego of the chair, to people who wish they were chair, to people who are chairs of subcommittees, to people who think they're important. I want to give some advice. So some thoughts, share them maybe with the next chair. You are going to stumble. You will be hated. You will not be perfect. You will be faced with difficult decisions where you must choose from a bad or a worse outcome. You cannot please everyone, and you should not try. You are going to have to become an expert at everything. You must wade through spreadsheets. You must know everything staff does. You must make fundraising calls. You must have your finger on the pulse of political strategy. You must understand marketing. You must learn to use Ronar. You must learn to flex diplomacy. You must learn to be a strong leader and to push through when people doubt you sometimes. You must have the wisdom and discernment and judgment to understand the difference. You must be a professional, a radical, and a visionary. You must not be swayed by bureaucracy. You must carry forth a vision and execute. Beware of shifting alliances and power grabs. Beware of demoralization campaigns. You must ignore attacks by corporate media and lawbirds and feds. I say hello to the corporate media and feds who are watching this right now. You will be attacked by feds, and you're going to have to charge on. There's no way out but through. I pray that you'll guide the party from your place in the eye of the storm and that they'll listen to you. I pray that God will grant you wisdom, patience, and grace. I pray that God will protect you from the vicious, relentless cyber stalking that comes with this job. And I pray that God will protect your family. My job now is to shift my role in the hero's journey, to pass the torch on to the next great hero, to become the mentor and to guide you and counsel you along the way. I will support you as you fight all of these battles, and I will allow you to be the new hero because that's your job. And then one day, your job will change and you will join me as a mentor. And that's something we can do together that this party is desperately lacking right now. In 2022, as I began to campaign for this role, I compared us to the Israelites wandering in the desert. And I have brought you to the edge of the promised land, and we have glimpsed it. But someone now has to be the one to lead you over the edge and into the promised land. Kind of like Moses, my role is to die on this hill. I want to give some advice to the LNC and to party members, people who are in positions of leadership on a slightly lower level, people who might think about joining the LNC. Be wary of bureaucrats and people with cluster B personality disorder. It's not just women. Men have it too. Beware of interlopers and people seeking to put their own egos ahead of the mission. Beware of people seeking power. Beware of people who exhibit cruelty. Beware of those who elevate bureaucracy over freedom. Beware of ideologues and the demonically possessed who walk among us. Beware of those who seek to tear down what we have built for their own personal aggrandizement. We have built something incredible, and don't let them try to tear it down. Beware of anyone who seeks to elevate infighting over the freedom of Ross Ulbricht. They should automatically be disqualified and shunned. Tall poppy syndrome is plaguing this party right now. It is a deadly pestilence. Do not allow it to take root in leadership ranks. Steer clear of narcissism. Steer towards the mission of exacting wins at the federal level via concessions. Steer towards the decentralized revolution at the local level. PDR. Trust the mission. Have faith in leaders who brought you this far. Ignore the haters. Disregard their propaganda. And if you can find it in your heart, you need to pray for your enemies. Now, as some of my last acts of chair, I am issuing a few impactful directives. Some of them I have left with staff, and staff will be executing on them after the confirmation hearings that impact us are completed next week. But the first chair's directive I am issuing on this call is to grant an honorary lifetime membership to President Donald J. Trump, the 45th and 47th President of the United States. An honorary membership does not confer voting rights. It does not include a signing of the non-aggression principle, but it is an honor. And Donald Trump took time out of his schedule to sit down, listen to me, listen to my concerns, read the comments and concerns and suggestions that all of our party members put on our internal poll last year, promised that he would free Ross Ulbricht, through all of the miserable, embarrassing behavior of our delegates at our national convention. And you know who you are if you did that. And he delivered on his promise anyway. He didn't have to do it. Barack Obama broke most of his promises to grassroots leaders. So did Biden. Biden left BLM right out in the cold. Donald Trump didn't just deliver on his promise to free Ross. He went above and beyond. Instead of a commutation, he gave the man a full pardon. He did it 36 hours after he was sworn in. And he did it in a very public way, and he thanked us. And so my thanks to him is to give him an honorary lifetime membership. Thank you, President Trump. That was incredible. Thank you for saving the life of a libertarian. Thank you for showing that you care about us. I acknowledge and understand that you are GOP, former Dem. You didn't have to go out of your way for us, and you did. So thank you. My next act as chair, my directive, is we have this really tasteless mascot called George Quillies. It is named after someone who I believe is a federal operative, and hopefully I'll be finding that out with the help of some of the people who will be ascending in the intelligence agencies soon to unmask all of these freaks and declassify things. So I don't know that it's within my purview to kick George Quillies to the curb, but I am giving us a new Libertarian Party mascot in addition to George Quillies. And I hope that everyone else will kick George Quillies to the curb. Our new additional Libertarian Party mascot is going to be Milo the Lion. That's right. We are going to model ourselves much more after the Lion of Argentina, the highly successful Javier Milei, who holds himself out as a lion, who has slashed the federal budget and done what maybe no libertarian ever thought possible, which is basically become the president of a country and slash the federal government and, rescue a country that was just in an economic death spiral. Now, there's this 1986 movie called The Adventures of Milo and Otis. It follows the life of a small orange tabby kitten as he grows up. He sort of goes through the cat version of a process of self-actualization. If a cat can go through such a process, he has kittens of his own. His name is Milo. I kind of thought of that a little bit too. Like we are on our way to becoming a lion. I feel like we sort of had this sort of house cat mentality, and we are leaving that in the past. It's my opinion that the porcupine should never have been the LP mascot. Yes, a porcupine has quills, but it is inherently a prey animal. It is inherently passive. It has no real power. It doesn't shoot quills. The best it could do is shake and maybe a few kind of fly out. It's not an attack animal. And I think the non-aggression principle is a useless hollow gesture unless it is adopted by a creature capable of great aggression. The NAP is useless unless you can recognize you are capable of great aggression and you have the ability to restrain yourself. And that's what makes a powerful, self-actualized, competent, capable libertarian. Weak men are probably the most capable of evil, but I don't think they're very capable of good. We need to be strong. We need to exercise restraint. We need wisdom. We need judgment. We need power and discernment. And we need to go and just relentlessly pursue freedom and goodness. Now, I can't say where I'm going yet. I need to wait until after Kennedy's confirmation. But I am confident my new position is going to continue our mission and make America libertarian again. I ask you to support Michael Heiss for chair, to continue to support me in whatever way you have. Definitely support the Mises Caucus and celebrate all of our awesome wins. I want to help keep you delivering wins. Thank you guys so much for your support. My advice to all my listeners is just, I'd ask you to just relentlessly pursue freedom and liberty. Develop your instincts. Trust your instincts. As Michael Heiss said in his notorious interview with Reason in 2022, you will know us by our fruits. And I got to say, we have achieved the biggest libertarian, political, moral, and just win in the party's history. Taste the fruits. The fruits are good. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, that was an overall great address about building a real political movement in our time. Yeah, and I see people in the chat, you're all fixating on Javier Milei. Like, you're missing the point, right? I didn't put it on there because I agree with her. She doesn't agree with us about economics. I put it on there because she is a skilled organizer of a dissident political movement that is going to be part of the anti-monopoly coalition that is emerging. And she has dealt with the same kind of bullshit that we've dealt with, and she has pushed back against it very effectively. She built the Rage Against the War Machine coalition rally. She entered a strategic alliance with the Trump administration that has really paid off for her party. And she articulated how important the political relationships are. And it's really, really great what they've done. And they have made a difference, and they have pushed back against the same kind of infighting and the same kind of the way they control political spaces at this point. And I'll just be honest with you all about this. I mean, we've talked about this here before, but I'll just repeat it. The way they control political spaces at this time is in every dissident community, they boost a few people that are big social media influencers, and they boost them. And then they then proceed to cancel and smear and destroy any real organization that emerges. And that has happened in libertarian spaces. There are certain big libertarian social media personalities that are out there, and they all hate Angela's guts, and they smear Angela, and they all denounce the Rage Against the War Machine rally and opposed it. And they all, called her all kinds of nasty names and all of that. And they're boosted. Meanwhile, Angela's social media is very small, but she's the one running the actual party that organized the actual rally, that strategically entered the actual alliance with Trump. And she's about to have a post in the actual administration. Meanwhile, all these big social media personalities that hated Rage Against the War Machine. Oh, so-and-so is going to be there. Oh, where are they? They're all boosted on social media, and they're all talking crap, and they're all throwing feces, and they're not changing the world. And you look at libertarian spaces, it's very much like the spaces that we're in. Big people get, big social media influencers are everywhere, and they're throwing feces and crap at anyone who does any real organizing. And this is even true on the far right. Nick Fuentes, right, is a piece of shit. He is absolutely a piece of shit. And he's not representative of any real organization. He just spews cynical frat boy bullying, anti-Semitism, whatever, mixed in with stupid. And then there are people on the far right who I don't agree with, but they are sincere. And you'll notice all their organizations get torn apart really, really quick, and they get smeared and all of that. And all the actual far right groups, they tend to fall apart. And I mean, this is true in communist spaces. This is true in libertarian spaces. This is true in far right spaces. They boost influencers, and those influencers are usually cynical, and they immediately attack and smear any real organizing that goes on. They create an atmosphere where, if you want to be famous on the internet, you're afraid to be associated with anybody. Oh, I can't be seen with this person. I can't be seen with that person, right? They know what they're doing, right? It's very sophisticated. They are running a counterinsurgency. This is what I wrote about in my book that I recently wrote about the murder of Brian Thompson and the danger of an American Years of Lead. The way that they seek to control dissident spaces is they don't want to make it the establishment versus the anti-monopoly coalition. They want to make it the establishment versus confusing, crazy, nobody knows what, a bunch of people who hate each other, and then the establishment wins by default. And that's how counterinsurgency operations are waged. They make it so the opposition is a confused mess where everyone thinks everyone else is a Fed. It's not clear what the opposition is even for. They're constantly fighting the other oppositionists, and they're very suspicious of each other. And then the imperialist state wins by default. And this is what they did This is what they did to defeat the Italian anti-NATO movement, right? And that's what they did. I mean, there was an anti-NATO movement. The Italian Communist Party and its allies were going to win the elections in Italy. And with Operation Gladio, the CIA funded the far right, and they funded the Red Brigades, the Maoist communists, to kidnap and torture and assassinate. And they played different communist groups against each other, and they played different far right groups against each other. And there was so much confusion that Italy stayed in NATO. In Jamaica, right, they elected Michael Manley, who was a great anti-imperialist leader who admired Fidel Castro and was going to try to transition Jamaica to be an anti-imperialist country. And then what happened? Well, there were all kinds of gangs that were trained by the CIA, and some of them were communist gangs, and some of them were anti-communist gangs, and shower posse, and there was all kinds of killing and terror and craziness. And after a while, the population just got weary, and Jamaica remained what it is today, which is, part of the British imperialist globalist system, right? This is how they defeated the IRA in Northern Ireland. The IRA, they were this big anti-imperialist group that was supported by Gaddafi. It was supported by the Soviet Union. They had a lot of support among Irish Catholics. And then what did they do? They funded the Irish, the Protestant groups to engage in assassinations of IRA people. They sent drug dealers into the IRA to get the IRA mixed up with organized crime. They funded ultra-leftist extremist groups, Trotskyites and Maoists, that said the IRA were sellouts and killed IRA fighters. And they made the opposition to British imperialism so confusing and violent and dangerous that finally they signed the Good Friday Agreement. The IRA surrendered. This is what they do. This is the art of counterinsurgency, right? Is that they don't make it the state versus the insurgents, because that's a David and Goliath scenario, and they don't want a David and Goliath scenario. Instead, they make it so there's not a clear David, and they make it so everyone just kind of sticks with Goliath because he's the only force that looks like he's strong enough to actually run things. And there's about 100 different Davids fighting each other who are confusing and incoherent. That's the art of counterinsurgency in our time, right? That's the way that they carry out their counterinsurgency operations. And that's what Angela, as a libertarian, has been trying to counter, right? And that's why she's been the target of so many mainstream media hit pieces. She would probably never be able to get a job in the private sector again. And she's tweeted about this. She could never get a job again in the private sector because there are so many mainstream media hit pieces about how she's a Nazi, she's a white supremacist, she's this, she's that, and every mainstream libertarian, every libertarian influencer has denounced her, but she keeps going because she's committed to this. And we're dealing with the same kind of counterinsurgency. And the far right is dealing with the same kind of shit, right? Nick Fuentes is out there and he's famous. He's got 1 million followers, and he gets on there and does this stupid insult comedy. And what does he do? He doxes people. He harasses people, etc. And then there are people that are sincere, that are trying to build far right groups that are anti-Israel or whatever. And the FBI goes after them. They get smeared. They get harassed. Their rivalries are played up, etc. And the same thing happens in our circles. There are certain people that, BreadTube was round one, and I exposed that BreadTube was a CIA operation. And that's been at this point with, ContraPoints boosted by Hillary Clinton. And I mean, it's like I was proven 100% correct, but they boosted BreadTube to be the big socialists. Right. And then after I did that, then they created BreadTube 2.0. And there's, some other doofuses that sound a little closer to what we sound like. They at least pretend to support Russia and China, etc. But they're the same kind of thing. Right. And I just got to tell you, when the Uhuru movement was on trial, where were we? We were in the federal courthouse in Tampa, standing with them. A week after they were raided, they were at our conference in Chicago. And we were at the federal courthouse when their trial began. In Florida, we were at the Uhuru House at their rallies. We were at the federal courthouse when they were sentenced, and we were with them. Where were these jackasses? Where were the certain organizations that have smeared us and harassed us? Where were they? Did they do anything for Uhuru? No, nothing. They did absolutely nothing for Uhuru. And then when Donald Trump was inaugurated, right? And, millions of Americans voted for Donald Trump because he said he was going to end the Ukraine war. And he said that he was going to restart peace talks on the Korean Peninsula. And he was inaugurated. We were in Washington, D.C., outside his inauguration with a huge banner that said only peace can make America great again. And another huge banner that said build the peace bridge. And we had a rally, an indoor reception on Inauguration Day. Where were they? Where were these people? Right? These people, millions of Americans voted for Trump because he said he wants peace with Russia. He says he wants peace with North Korea. Where were they? Where were they? Show me, where were they? Show me one of them that did anything to reach out to Trump supporters on Inauguration Day. Nothing. Right? And then Tulsi Gabbard is sworn in. It is having confirmation hearings before the U.S. Senate. Right? And she's, refusing to call Edward Snowden a traitor. And I'm in the room and I'm handing out our pamphlets about a new day for America. I'm handing them out to people there, and I'm with the people that are there to support Tulsi Gabbard. Where were they? They were nowhere. And if you can't understand why, but they're cool on the internet. If you can't understand why certain organizations are not real organizations, they're just internet fan clubs. And there's a reason that they can't say my name without hurling a huge amount of childish sexual insults. If you can't understand that, God help you, right? But there's a reason that we have been subject to so many smears. There's a reason we have been harassed the way we are. It's because we're a real anti-imperialist movement. And these jackasses out there, they're just jackasses. And there's all these people on the internet braying like donkeys. Bruh, bruh, right? And bruh, and it doesn't mean shit. It doesn't mean shit. They are braying donkeys and they're just talking. We are building the anti-monopoly coalition, right? I mean, we have influenced Tulsi Gabbard. We have influenced Angela McCurdle. We were sponsors of the 2 Rage Against the War Machine rallies, and we had an amazing reception after the first one where Scott Ritter spoke. We are a real movement that is getting real shit done. That's us. And if you can't understand, that these jackasses that are braying on the internet, I mean, that's basically what they do. If you can't understand that what they're doing doesn't mean shit, I pity you. I really pity you. We're getting it done. We are building a real anti-imperialist movement, and we are right in the middle of the action. And there's a big fight right now where the American people in their millions have risen up against the FBI, have risen up against the low-wage police state and their drive toward World War III. We're in the middle of that fight. We are in the game, and we are making a difference. And we're doing great things. We had our letter to Trump that was viewed by hundreds of thousands of people. I mean, we're doing it. We're actually doing it. So I would urge you, if you really want to see a new America for working families, if you really want to see this awful system of globalism, imperialism defeated, you need to get involved with the Center for Political Innovation. And you need to forget about the jackasses braying on the internet, because we're the real thing. We are the real deal. If you really support the people of Cuba, you really support the people of Venezuela, Nicaragua, you really support the Palestinians and the Iranians and the Yemenis, if you really support the people of Idaho and Texas and Minnesota, you really support the American working families who want their relatives to come home from the military and not be shot at in some other country to protect Wall Street profits, if you really want communities in Indiana and Pennsylvania and Idaho to have paved roads and new economic opportunities, if you want your children to have a future that doesn't involve prison and opioid addiction and a low-wage police state, you need to be in the Center for Political Innovation. You need to be in the Center for Political Innovation. We are really doing it. We're really doing it. We're not virtue signaling on the internet. We're not putting on a show. This is a real movement. And we are winning. We are on the winning side of an uphill battle. We are getting it done. So become a member of CPI today. Come to our workshop that we are doing coming up. We had a great workshop coming up in Minnesota. Come to our national convention this summer. Become a member, a dues-paying member on our website. Get involved. This is the real movement. This is the real movement. We got way too much shit to do. And It's only uphill from here. We're on the winning team. Dare to struggle, dare to win. All right, so now we're going to do the roll call. And then after that, after the roll call, we will then start answering people's questions. So names and locations, folks. Names and locations. I will call you all out as I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. Names and locations, I'll call you all out as I see you. Names and locations, we're doing the roll call section of the show. Bob in Troy, New York. Welcome, Bob. Good to have you with us. Rice from Adelaide, Australia. Auckland, New Zealand, Kiwi Corner. Lawrence Johnson from Chicago. Hempcar from Wisconsin. Jenny in Cincinnati. Patch in Arizona. Dahe in Seattle. Ottawa, work in progress. Matt in Atlantic City. Denmark. Sami. Canada, Quebec, Canada. Alex in Brazil. Bendigo, Australia. David Fox. Gavin in Illinois, Chris in Salt Lake City, Mohsen from Iran, Courtney from Northern Virginia, Barcelona, Zach, JT24 in Mississippi, Sean in Calgary. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Names and locations, names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Who's with us? Names and locations. Ed in Louisville, Kentucky. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Names and locations, names and locations. Mohsen Vardock, cool dude. All right. Ian Chester in England, welcome, welcome. St. David's, Bermuda. Fatima from Minneapolis. Are you going to be at the workshop? We're having a workshop in Minneapolis coming up, Fatima. I hope you will be there, right? It's going to be great. It's going to be a great workshop in Minneapolis. So you're in Minneapolis. I hope I meet you at the workshop. And that goes for anybody else who's watching, who's in the tri-state area. It's going to be great. Go ahead and register right now. We got Penny out there. She's doing all kinds of outreach, getting palm cards out to people about our great event. It's going to be awesome. Just dropping the link in the chat. Gabby in Chicago, dedicated member doing great work. Please tell Trump not to invade Mexico. Of course, I'm against that, obviously, and I don't think he will. But if he does, that'll be a huge mistake, and I'll be the first to oppose it. We don't offer blind support to any politician, right? We can criticize people. But yes, register for our workshop. Anybody else? Names and locations. Marissa from Texas. Welcome, Marissa. Good to have you with us. Names and locations. Names and locations. Anybody else? Anybody else? Toey in Stockholm, Sweden. Welcome, Toey. Good to have you with us. Anybody else? Names and locations. Oh, Fatima's already registered. Great. Looking forward to meeting you. Looking forward to meeting you at the workshop. It's going to be great. Ottawa, Minor Threat in Los Angeles. Welcome. We got a good crew out in LA. The LA crew. Oh, Ellie in Chicago. Dedicated, loyal member, great person. Pierce in Arizona. Welcome, Pierce. Good to have you with us. Yes, yes, yes. Oh, Daniel is also in Los Angeles. Good stuff. The LA CPI group is doing great work, by the way. You should get involved with them, Danielle. If you haven't already been involved, they had a meeting just today. They're doing great work volunteering and confronting the fallen gong. And, you know, our LA group is on fire. I'm headed out to LA in the next couple months. Looks like there's going to be an LA workshop before our convention. So I hope I see you there. Look, we're building a real movement. It's not easy to build a real movement. You got to travel a lot. I was exhausted. I wanted to stream yesterday, but I couldn't. I was just so damn tired. I just couldn't stream. And I'd come into DC and I filmed things, and it is not easy to build a real anti-imperialist movement, but you got to do it because there is no real alternative. You're not going to change the world with a podcast. You can change the way people think with a podcast. That's good. But you got to actually organize. You got to actually organize and build a movement. And that's what we are doing. Traveling is very exhausting. And I'm headed out to Minneapolis. I already got my plane tickets. I'm flying out to Minneapolis in a couple of weeks. And then we're having our convention in Chicago this summer. And we're doing the 7-day program for everyone who's coming to town, where we're going to learn activism and teach real skills. It's going to be a 7-day training program that we're doing. We're doing this stuff for real. So we have 3 super chats that have come in. I know you all have to have more questions. You have to have more questions. You got to give me more to talk about in the second half of the show. We got one Rumble rant from Hempcar. It's a good one. But before I start answering questions, I'm going to give you all another chance to send, please, I need something to talk about. Give me some super chats. Give me some content generation. Come on, folks, give me something to talk about. I'm going to put on one of my favorite traditional Irish struggle songs. It's a very old Gaelic Irish rebel song that goes back apparently to the time of the Roman Empire. It's welcoming home the warriors. You're welcoming home the warriors from the fight. This is a very good Irish Gaelic rebel song. Please send more super chats while it is playing.
Oro Shilova Owalia, Oro Shilova Owalia, Oro Shilova Owalia, Nishar Haptam Tare, Shilova Havan Bale, the Bea Gratu Vei, the Hura, Eselif Migrasu Tilta Leshna Gala, Oro Shilova Owalia, Oro Shilova Owalia, Oro Shilova Owalia, Nishar Haptam Tare, Agran Yawela Jaktar Sala, Ole Armale Margarda, Geri Hengis Kigana, Spana Skurshi Ruyargada, Oro Shilova Owalia, Oro Shilova Owalia, Oro Shilova Owalia, Nishar Haptam Tare, Avila Rina Varsko Vekin, Muna Medio Rina Yera Shakten, Ranya Wela Gasmira Gashnar Volar Fadar Dara, Oro Shilova Owalia, Oro Shilova Owalia, Oro Shilova Owalia, Nishar Haptam, Nishar Haptam, Oro Shilova Owalia, Oro Shilova Owalia, Oro Shilova Owalia,
All right. Oh, so your question didn't come through. All right. Very, very good. Okay. I will answer that question, Zach. Thank you. Sorry. Sometimes people have confusion and it doesn't get, yes, that is a fantastic, absolutely fantastic Irish rebel song. It always gets me going. I really, really like, or what is it? Oro She Gabal Hawara, or I don't even know how to pronounce it. I don't speak Gaelic, so there you go. But it's some powerful, powerful stuff. Absolutely powerful. And on top of that, I think we will play some other songs on here. I will say this. We have kind of a tradition on this YouTube channel that on Sundays, I will just upload a very, very long video, a compilation of different stuff, basically. And I've been doing that for a while. And it's just kind of a mixture of different songs and different, speeches and different clips and all of that. It's a great thing we do on Sunday. So starting tomorrow at 9:30, all day for like 8 hours, there will be a video streaming on this channel. I encourage you to use it as background music, right? Just, put it on if you're walking around the house or you're exercising or something. I put a lot of songs. I put a lot of content out there. And so every Sunday we have like a mega upload video. It just premieres all day long. Tomorrow, starting at 9:30 Eastern AM, there's going to be a mega stream, a mega upload. Just listen to it. Just enjoy it. Okay. So this next song I'm going to put on while I wait for more people to send their super chats, because I know you all got more questions. So please send more questions. I'm going to put on another song. This is the song in China that they do in honor of Lei Fang. So Lei Fang is like the national hero of China. He was a Chinese soldier who died. And when he died, they found his diary. And in his diary, they saw that he volunteered. He helped old people. And he was just the most dedicated, loyal communist, Lei Fang. And so they have a national holiday in China called Lei Fang Day in honor of Lei Fang. And Lei Fang is just this Chinese soldier who was just an ordinary man who was a very dedicated communist. And on Lei Fang Day, all the kids go and they clean the public parks. And the song, I really like it because it says, know where you came from and know where you are going. And it's just a very upbeat, patriotic song about loving your country and loving your community. And it's part of the Chinese Communist Party's culture they've created. So I'm going to put on the Lei Fang song. And this is kids in China performing a song in honor of Lei Fang, the national hero. So here we go. Yeah, that is awesome. I love the Lei Fang song, by the way. I absolutely love the Lei Fang song. And I got to tell you, I have said many, many times that one of the problems facing the West, look, there's so many ways to come at this, right? I've talked about the crisis of overproduction, the crisis of imperialism, the tendency of the falling rate of profits. But deeper than that, there is a psychological crisis in the West. And that psychological crisis that has emerged is a crisis of ideology. If you're driving down the road, you know where you came from, you know where you're going, you know how you're getting there. Imagine that you were driving down the road and suddenly you didn't know where you were coming from and you didn't know where you were going. You would stop the car. Ideology is knowing where you're coming from and knowing where you're going. And human beings need ideology. They need ideology because you need to know where you're coming from. It's really important. If you're a person and you don't know where you came from, that's a problem. If you don't know where you're going, that's a problem. Ideology tells you who you are and what your life means. And it used to be in America, we had the American ideology. This is the greatest country in the world. Capitalism is the best system ever. Well, we now realize the American ideology is bullshit. Good. However, they have not replaced it with anything. They've replaced it with philosophical irrationalism. There is no truth. There is no great leader. There is nothing worth fighting for or dying for. So they've erased the bullshit imperialist American ideology. Good. But they've only replaced it with There is no truth. Everything's a matter of opinion. And that is leading to a huge psychological crisis because people need ideology. People absolutely need ideology. Well, all those kids in that video, they all were wearing red scarves around their neck. And do you know what that red scarf is? Every Chinese child is part of what's called the Young Pioneers. And they used to have this in the Soviet Union too. The Young Pioneers. And it's like the Boy Scouts or the Girl Scouts, except it's communist. And they give them their own little red scarf. And in China, they tell them that their red scarf, that's their own little piece of the Chinese flag. And it's red for all the people who have died in order to build new China. And that they are taught from the time that they are little that it is they are part of the great project of national rejuvenation of the Chinese nation, of socialism with Chinese characteristics, defeating imperialism and colonialism, and building a new China. And the Chinese dream is this ideology that they are given from the time that they are little. And is it shocking that they're churning out the best engineers and scientists? Is it shocking that their civilization is coming together and having more influence? Of course not, because they have ideology. They have purpose. They believe in what they are doing. Human beings need ideology. They need a purpose, right? And leftism has become synonymous with cynicism. And the right has become associated with trying to revive the old American ideology or believing in free markets or whatever. What we need is a new ideology, a form of socialism with American characteristics, right? In China, they call their system socialism with Chinese characteristics. Well, we are pioneering anti-imperialism, anti-globalism with American characteristics. It's called innovationism. And we have an understanding of the trajectory of history from hunter-gatherer civilization to slavery to feudalism, all the way up to capitalism, and capitalism moving to the stage of imperialism, and the rise of socialism and anti-imperialism, and eventually leading to a whole new world of wealth, so much wealth that we don't even need a state. We have ideology. We have the innovationist ideology, which is a synthesis of the communist and anti-imperialist and anti-globalist movements around the world. And it's very, very exciting what we are doing. And we are giving people ideology. And the reason China is strong is because they have ideology. They also have an economy where the banks, factories, and industries are forced to work in the interest of society overall. They also invest in their population. We don't do that here. We view, our elite view the population as an obnoxious horde to be managed, but we invest in our population, right? So we are doing something very, very important. That's why I like to show videos like that on these streams. So I see that there's a number of super chats that have come in. Please keep them rolling in, but I'm going to start answering them now. So the first, there's two Rumble rants that have come from Hemp Car. So Hemp Car first says, the King family attorney said Martin Luther King Jr. was killed because he was going to bring 500,000 people to occupy Washington, D.C. to end war and poverty. Ultimately, isn't this the end goal? How do we work towards this? So what you're referring to, that was called Resurrection City. Very Christian. Martin Luther King Jr. was absolutely a Christian in every bone. And it happened just after he was killed. It happened without him. But Martin Luther King Jr., in the final years of his life, he became dedicated to opposing poverty and building what he called the Poor People's Movement. And he said, look, we need to start talking about economic justice. And I mean, in his final years, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said he was an advocate of democratic socialism. He rejected Marxism as a Christian. He rejected dialectical materialism, but he said we need democratic socialism. He denounced the Vietnam War, and he started building poor people's movements. And he started organizing something called Resurrection City. He was going to bring thousands and thousands of poor people to Washington, D.C. to occupy the city, to demand an end to the Vietnam War, and to demand that there be full employment and jobs for all. And at the time he actually, and this is a really important thing, Martin Luther King Jr. was shot down basically on a picket line. the sanitation workers, the public employees of Memphis, Tennessee, were on strike because they weren't paid a decent wage. They were black, and they didn't have union representation because it was the South, and they were discriminated against, and they were treated badly. And so they had the slogan, "I am a man." That was the slogan that they used, and they went on strike. And all the garbage collectors and all the, the sanitation and maintenance workers of the city of Memphis were on strike. Martin Luther King Jr. went to Memphis, Tennessee, to organize the sanitation workers. And at his hotel, he was shot by a sniper. And the Martin Luther King Jr. family has won a settlement in federal court that the U.S. government was responsible for that murder to some degree. I will show this clip because you mentioned this, Hempcar. This is really important, and I'm really excited for all the, for what is going to come out. I mean, the fact that these files are going to be available very soon. This is going to be very important, right? Because we're going to know a lot more about this. But the murder of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he was killed at the time he was starting to sound like CPI, right? Martin Luther King Jr., he was selected to lead the Montgomery bus boycott because he was not a communist, because he was young enough to have not had any association with the Communist Party USA. But at the time of his final years of his life, he started to realize that the issues facing U.S. society were rooted in economics. He gave a very powerful speech condemning the Vietnam War. And then he started advocating democratic socialism, and he wanted to build a movement of poor people. And that's when he was killed. And these are clips from the final year of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s life, when he started sounding like CPI. And so, I mean, I'm just going to put on, this is a clip that I compiled of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. right before he was killed. You watch this clip, Hempcar, you will know why they murdered Martin Luther King Jr. This is what they're afraid of. This is what BreadTube was set up to cancel people for speaking about class reductionism, right? This is what they brainwash people with free market ideology to believe you should never talk about. This is what they're really afraid of. And this is what CPI is all about. Anti-imperialism, fighting for working families. This is Martin Luther King.
We read one day, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But if a man doesn't have a job or an income, he has neither life nor liberty and the possibility for the pursuit of happiness. He merely exists. Estimated that we spend $322,000 for each enemy we kill in Vietnam, while we spend in the so-called war on poverty in America only about $53 for each person classified as poor. The promises of the Great Society have been shot down on the battlefield of Vietnam, making the poor, white and Negro, bear the heaviest burdens both at the front and at home. The other thing I want you to understand is this, that it didn't cost the nation one penny to integrate lunch counters. It didn't cost the nation one penny to guarantee the right to vote. But now we are dealing with issues that cannot be solved without the nation spending billions of dollars and undergoing a radical redistribution of economic power. Yes. All labor has dignity. Yes. But you're doing another thing. You are reminding not only Memphis, but you are reminding the nation that it is a crime for people to live in this rich nation and receive starvation wages. America's opportunity to help bridge the gulf between the haves and the have-nots. And the question is whether America will do it. There's nothing new about poverty. What is new is that we now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty. The real question is whether we have the will.
Yeah. That was the Martin Luther King Jr. that they killed. The Martin Luther King Jr. who denounced the Vietnam War and was building Resurrection City. And it still happened, but he wasn't there to lead it, and it ultimately was not successful. But yes, he was building a poor people's movement. You have to also remember there was a booming economy at the time. So he was highlighting all the people that were left behind. And in the 1960s, the U.S. economy was booming. It was amazing. It was a very powerful economy. So, but there was still a layer of people, African Americans in the urban centers, and folks in Appalachia that were left behind. And he was giving a voice to those people by building poor people's movements. So yeah, there you go. He started talking about class, and he started realizing that the oppression of black people was tied in with the entire economic system where the ultra rich were oppressing people. And it was tied in with the war in Vietnam. And he was starting to piece everything together. And that's when they took his life. So the next, Hempcar also says, do you think Kash Patel will create another church committee? And if he does, what do you think we'll learn from it, and who will be fired or prosecuted? Well, Trump, at this point, from what we understand, Trump has taken action against, everyone who was involved in the January 6th investigations, right? That's coming out. And that Kash Patel is coming in there when he's ratified as FBI director. They're going to do a huge expose of FBI repression and FBI crimes against American working people. I'm curious what comes out. I mean, we'll just have to see. Angela is quite excited about, stuff that might come out about the Libertarian Party. I don't know. We'll just have to see. I don't know what's going to happen. I know that we're on the right side of this revolution. There's a revolution right now against the deep state, against the FBI, against the Rockefellers, against the war monopolies and the war economy, against the George Soros color revolution apparatus, against the emerging low-wage police state. And we're on the right side of it. Now, ultimately, this revolution has to turn into a social revolution. And we need a rationally organized economy. We can't, have austerity and free market capitalism. But at the same time, we're proud to see the U.S. imperialist state be broken up. It needs to be broken up. The FBI is a criminal organization. The George Soros color revolution apparatus needs to be broken up. Needs to happen. So there you go. There you go. All right. So those are one more favorite quote from MLK. The U.S. government is the greatest purveyor of violence on this earth. That's Hempcar gave one more super chat there. That actually comes from the Beyond Vietnam speech that he gave at Riverside Church. Riverside Church is a really, really big church in Harlem, New York City. It's like the biggest church. And in that church, Dr. Martin Luther King gave his famous Beyond Vietnam speech, which you can listen to online. Very powerful speech. I would recommend going and listening to that speech. And he goes over the Vietnam War, where it came from, etc., and why he opposed it. And that's where that quote about the U.S. government being the greatest purveyor of violence on earth comes from. And he said, at the time, there were a lot of urban riots happening. And Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was being used by the American government when there was rioting. When the black community would riot, they would send Martin Luther King Jr. to show up and tell the black community to stop rioting. And Martin Luther King Jr. actually said, I can't do that anymore. I'm a hypocrite because I can't tell black people they need to be nonviolent when their government is the greatest purveyor of violence on the earth. And they're being drafted to fight in one of the most violent, ugly, unjust wars. He said, I'm sorry, if you're going to use me to encourage nonviolence from the black community, I have to oppose the violence of the American government. And I mean, that's a really important point. He said, look, I just can't, I'm a hypocrite. If you use me to tell black people not to be violent in America, I have got to tell my own government not to be violent in Vietnam. And that was the point he was making. I think it's a very, very fair point. So there we go. All right. So now we'll start answering these super chats. Will RFK Jr. be confirmed too? It looks like he will. I mean, I'm seeing that all three are going to be confirmed. Donald Trump does have the option of what's called a recess appointment, where basically if Congress, blocks, these people, he can wait till Congress is on recess and sneak them in that way. But from what I understand, it looks like they've got the votes. Now, I heard RFK is going to be closer. I heard Tulsi's got the votes lined up, but RFK is going to be a little bit closer. But we'll see. We'll see. I feel like Trump is fired up enough and angry enough at the deep state that if they don't get through Congress, the Senate, then he's just going to recess appoint them. Because Donald Trump is angry, and Donald Trump is ready to overturn the apple cart. And I think that they're going to get through. It looks like RFK is the one they are fighting the most. And that is interesting to me. You'd think Tulsi Gabbard would be the one that they were fighting the most. They were certainly vicious to her. I was in the room. Oh, you won't call Edward Snowden a traitor. Oh, my God. But apparently RFK is the one they hate the most. I got to say, Bernie Sanders, my God, Bernie Sanders is acting like a piece of shit right now. And the way Bernie Sanders has treated RFK is horrendous. And, oh, do you see these onesies? You made money from onesies that said, that said unvaxxed. Oh, my God. I mean, Bernie Sanders, wow. There are times I've thought Bernie Sanders played a very good role. But the way he has acted in response to RFK, who is very anti-war when it comes to Russia, right, and very critical of U.S. foreign policy, who admits that the CIA killed his father. I mean, the way RFK has been treated by Uncle Bernie is utterly, utterly horrendous. And look, RFK is a little bit of a maverick, right? And he was a longtime environmentalist. He was on the left side. He was an environmentalist. He's been cleaning up the Hudson River and fighting for, better pollution controls and better environmentalism, for most of his life. But he started to realize that the main poisoner of the American people was Big Pharma. And he started to realize that Big Pharma and that, that the death rates that we're having and the food that we eat in the USA is not healthy, and that the medical system is messed up, and that Big Pharma has a grip over our government and we're being poisoned. And he's entered a fight against Big Pharma. And that's very admirable. And he's a leftist. I mean, he's a lifelong Democrat, part of the Kennedy family. Because Trump is the anti-FBI, anti-CIA candidate, he's in the Trump camp now, and they're going after him. I also want to say this. I don't give two shits about RFK's private life. Okay. And I'll just throw this out there. I don't care. Right. I really don't care. And I really, the stuff that I'm seeing floating around about RFK's private life. Okay. Right. You don't know if that's true. And he can't respond to it. And that's the worst thing about when they hit people with these sex lies, the sexual smears. He's married, right? There's all this stuff on the internet. His ex-wife killed himself because she cheated on him. You don't know if that's true. And do you think he can come out and say that? Can he come out and say, oh, yes, my ex-wife actually... No, he can't say that, right? Because he's got a current wife, and that's a private, personal matter. And so people say, oh, his ex-wife killed herself, because you don't know that. You don't know that that's what happened. You don't know that that's what happened, and he can't respond, right? And that's what they do with these nasty sexual smears. And you know what? Do I care if RFK is a nice guy that I would want to date? No. Do I? I mean, I don't date men, but I'm married anyway. But you know what I'm saying, right? Is RFK a great guy who you'd want to have a beer with? He seems like it, but maybe not. I don't care. The issue is he's going to come in there and stand up to Big Pharma, and he's going to come in there and stand up to the deep state. He wants peace with Russia. He wants to, make our food healthy and, stop Big Pharma and the food industry from poisoning us and making us all obese. That's really good. Look, every time I go overseas, I lose weight, right? And I'll tell you, when I go to Russia, they feed us very well. I eat like a king in Russia, but I still lose a bunch of weight. You know why? Because their food is way better for you, and it's not pumped full of preservatives. When I went to Iran, one of my longest overseas trips, I was in Iran for like a month and a half or 2 months. I was in Iran. I came back. My wife is like, did you eat while you were there? I was skinny as a rail. No, I ate like a king in Iran. They fed me very, very well, the hotel buffet and everything. It's just their food is not pumped full of preservatives. That's why, right? That's why. So there you go. Yeah, the French intelligence Revcoms, the RCP, that's, you know, was a front for French intelligence. They're protesting RFK. Of course they are, because they're idiots, because they're working for NATO intelligence. That's why I exposed a long time ago that Bob Avakian is an asset. You know, but you know, they always feed you very well when you go on these overseas trips, and yet I always lose weight because their food, you know, is not processed and pumped full of chemicals and drugs. You know, look, I mean, like one thing we do here in America, right? We feed cows. I don't know, do they still do this? For a long time, they fed cows antibiotics in their daily food because it made them fatter, right? Now, how was that good, right? You know, and it was actually, it made it much more dangerous. I mean, it made it to the point that there was potentially going to be a superbug, you know, superbugs emerging that are antibiotic resistant. That's very, very dangerous. But they were just pumping every cow full of antibiotics just because, right? Just because it made them fatter, right? And I mean, there's so many things like this. You go to, you know, to different parts of the world, and they eat our food, and they're like, it doesn't taste normal, right? It doesn't taste normal. Your food is so full of chemicals. It's so, like, you know, like tomatoes in America don't taste like tomatoes. They taste like all the crazy, you know, pesticides and stuff we put on them. I mean, it's, you know, the way we do food. And I mean, something's up. And the fact, why is high fructose corn syrup in everything, right? Every food you get has got high fructose corn syrup in it. You know, sugar is in everything. That, you know, is sugar inherently bad for you? No. But like, we put sugar in everything. You know, stuff that doesn't even taste like sugar. Ketchup has sugar all over it. I mean, it's weird. There's something weird about how we do food here in America, and it's killing us, and it's making us obese. And RFK, he stood up to that. Good for him. Good for him. And it seems like they're coming down harder on him than the other two. I mean, Kash Patel, they've been hard on him. They've been hard on Tulsi, but RFK he's been the real target of it, and that's interesting to me. So I hope he's confirmed. All right. Even though, you know, and the Israel thing, look, I'm not thrilled with a lot of what he said about Israel and Iran also, but you know, we've talked about that before. So what does peace mean if the U.S. stays a cap bully? Well, what does cap bully? What do you mean by that? Right? I mean, if the USA is overthrowing governments around the world, that's not peace, is it? If the USA is destabilizing countries, if the USA is, you know, is launching coups and color revolutions, but that's the apparatus that Trump is breaking up. Now, Trump wants to emphasize he's trying to get a good deal for American capitalists, right? You know, and he's trying to get a good deal, and that's the interesting thing about this tariff thing. So there's a lot of conservatives and libertarians who want to get rid of income tax. They want to get rid of income tax, and instead they want to replace it with tariffs. They just tax products that come into the United States. That's been a long time thing, and it appears that Donald Trump might think that that's a way to get rid of inflation, right? And that would be very, very good, because the people who get hammered in income tax, we all know the richest of the rich don't pay income tax. There's some loophole. They put their money in some account, and you know, Jeff Bezos is not paying income tax, right? You know, the big corporations pay almost no taxes, whatever. The people who get hammered, right, are the lower level capitalists, the upper middle class, the lower levels of the 1%. You know, they're the ones that get hammered. They pay huge income tax, and you know, they get screwed. Imagine if you got rid of income tax, right? That would be like giving every American, you know, a 10, 15, 20% raise right there, right? And there'd be more spending power. The economy would go gangbusters. And if you're able to make up the difference with tariffs, you know, that's interesting. And that sounds like a libertarian economic policy that Trump and Elon Musk might advocate. I'm not saying that's the best answer. And I feel like the cuts in government jobs, et cetera, would certainly come at a heavy cost. So I'm not saying it would necessarily work, but it would certainly produce a short-term economic expansion. I don't know if it would work in the long run. but it would certainly create a boom in the short term, which is what Trump might need in order to secure his grip on power and really defeat his deep state rivals. So we'll have to see. Helicopter memes are not funny. You were right about that. No, I don't even want to play it on here. I can't even listen to it. It's such a sad song about Victor Jara. Arlo Guthrie performs a sad song written about Victor Jara, the folk musician who was murdered in Chile for being a communist and an anti-imperialist leader. I mean, it's like, it's not funny what happened in Chile. And the fact that libertarians have turned that into a joke. But that's the thing. That's how this stupid, toxic internet culture works. They made you upset. Oh, he cares about something. Oh, see? You know, and it's the same way. Oh, he thinks gulags are bad. I got him. Oh, he thinks it's bad what Chile did. Oh, he thinks the Holocaust is bad. Oh, you felt something. What a nerd. It's this bullying culture. No one's supposed to care about anything. You're just supposed to be a pot-smoking internet loser, right? And so if they can offend you by making a joke about crimes against humanity, right? You're a nerd because you laughed about it. You know, we need to, this is not how mature adults act. This is how losers act. Loser, pot-smoking, pessimistic bullies act this way. And I don't want to please those people, and I certainly don't want to build a movement of those people, right? And that's why get rid of the gulag memes, get rid of the helicopter memes, and get rid of any jokes about the Holocaust. It's not funny. It's not funny. It's not funny. And the mindset you have to have, to think it's funny is a mindset that is toxic, right? Don't do it. Just don't do it. All right. Don't want to say too much more about that. All righty. But anyway, so Zach sent his super chat, but then he then didn't get the question in. So I'm going to find Zach's question here and make sure it gets included. Hold on. Zach says, all right, didn't put my question in the donation. What do you think Trump's policy might mean for the European Union? Could we see different EU nations being willing to act independently from the USA? Yes, the European Union is going to break apart, right? And that's just the natural result of capitalist crisis. When there is an economic crisis, a crisis of overproduction, there starts to be more inter-imperialist rivalry because the rate of profit has gone down and the imperialist countries are fighting with each other. And that's World War I and World War II. They both came after great big crises. And Brexit was the beginning of that. You know, a big section of the British imperialists said, why are we tied up with the rest of the European imperialists? And on top of that, there is a stratification where it's almost like you have a layer in the imperialist countries. You have the ultra monopolies that are at this point pretty cosmopolitan internationalist. And then you have local capitalists who are tied in with the local economy, and they have a different agenda. And the Nigel Farage faction in Britain is at this point, they have a different economic interest than the Keir Starmer faction. So, yeah, I think under Trump, we will see, you know, the Alternative for Deutschland party get stronger. I think we'll see the National, the National Front in France get stronger. I think we'll see, Eurosceptics will get stronger. I think that's going to happen. And that, the European Union is based on at least some joint interest among the European imperialist countries. And I don't think it's there. And the Ukraine war is a great example of that. And the fact that that all over Europe, opposition is rising. I don't know if you saw this, but it looks like Gazprom, and they're rebuilding the Nord Stream pipeline. I don't know if you see this. They're rebuilding it. And Gazprom is involved in rebuilding the Nord Stream pipeline right now. That's very exciting. There's been some other developments I don't want to get into too much detail about, but I think a peace treaty is on the horizon. I think the Ukraine war is going to end. There's going to be a photo op with Zelensky and with Putin and with Trump, and I think the Ukraine war is going to end soon. However, there's going to be a huge pushback against it, and so we have to be very careful. But I think the Ukraine war is going to end, and I think when the Ukraine war ends, that will be the end of the. That'll be the end of the the European Union, and I think NATO will eventually fall apart as a result of that as well. Have you studied the economist Henry George? Have I studied his actual work? I have one of his books that I've looked at. Henry George was an economist who was he was around at the time of Karl Marx. He's a little bit older than Karl Marx. He lived in New York City, but he had a huge following in Britain, and he believed in nationalizing land, and every landowner would rent it from the state. They would tax land values. And he was not a Marxist so much. I mean, he wasn't a socialist. He was just for the nationalization. He believed land was the great equalizer, right? And so if you nationalized land, the rest of the economy would kind of be equalized along those lines. It was like a social, it wasn't social democracy, because social democracy is technically Marxist. And, Marxism focuses on industries. Henry George's focus was on land, right? He was an economist who wanted to, basically socialize land and natural resources and make natural resources and land public property. And he thought that would be the basis for creating like a rationally planned economy. And Henry George and Marx didn't agree with each other, but Marx endorsed Henry George when he ran for mayor of New York City. And the Marxists largely, Henry George had a big following and he ran for mayor of New York City. And the Marxists were a big faction supporting Henry George. I will say I have always, so Henry George, he was this British economist. He wanted to nationalize land values. And really, Henry George, he comes out of the fact, he comes out of the fact that in Britain, there was a fight between the land-owning capitalists and the industrialists. Okay? They fought with each other. And the Chartist movement in Britain, that was the first working class movement, was kind of funded by the landowning capitalists against the industrialists. And Marx talks about that in Capital. The first working class movement that ever existed, the first working class movement was actually a result of a fight in the ruling class. And the landowning, capitalists funded this movement of workers against their employers because they were fighting with the industrial factory owners. And so that was a big fight in like the beginning of British capitalism. So Henry George comes out. He was the industrialists funded Henry George. And he was saying that land should just be nationalized, right? And it was the and that you could have a strong economy if you just nationalized land. And that would completely demolish the landowning, like former aristocracy of Britain, because, the land would be nationalized. So what's interesting is, so in Britain, you have the Conservative Party, which is the Tories, it's called. And now the main opposition party is called the Labour Party. But prior to the Labour Party, the main opposition party was called the Liberal Democratic Party. So you had the Tories, the Conservative Party, they were the party of the landowning aristocracy, and the Liberal Democratic Party, or the Liberal Party, they were the party of the industrialists, and they were the party of the factory owners, and they were critical of the aristocracy and the landowning aristocrats, and they were fighting for industrialists and factory owners. And that was the way British politics was. And the labor movement, the rise of socialism, eventually gave birth to the Labour Party, which was the Social Democratic Party. And the Liberal Party eventually merged, and you have what's called the Lib Dems in Britain now. And they're considered an alternative to the Labour Party and an alternative to the Conservative Party. And the Liberal Democratic Party is descended from the Liberal Party, right? Which was originally, they were the opposition party to the Tories. The Tories trace their roots back to the time of the American Revolution. The Tories are the oldest political party in Britain. The Liberal Party was the original opposition party that was the industrialists, and then you had the Labour Party. But the Liberal Democrats, they were the party of Henry George. The Liberal Party, Henry George wanted to nationalize land and have land be public. So the Lib Dems, which are still a major political party in Britain, they've got seats in the parliament. They're called the Liberal Democrats. The Lib Dems, they're called, they still use the Henry George anthem as their party song, which is interesting. The Henry George movement, they have a song about nationalizing land that is kind of the anthem of their party. And it's to the tune of a song in America, a U.S. Civil War song called Marching Through Georgia. It's called The Land, 'twas God who made the land, the ground on which we stand. Why should we be beggars with the ballot in our hand? God gave the land to the people. Anyway, I'm going to put on, this is the anthem. This is at the Liberal Democratic Party convention, even though they no longer advocate the nationalization of land. They don't even advocate, Henry Georgeist economics anymore. This is the anthem this is the Henry George anthem that is still the anthem of the Liberal Democratic Party in Britain.
Victory, for God is on our side, while the voice of nature thunders on the rising tide. God gave the land to the people. The land was growing. The land, the ballot in our hand. Why should we be beggars with the ballot in our hand? God made the land for the people. The sound is spreading from the east and from the west. Why should we work hard and let the landlords take the best? Make them pay their taxes on the land that's like the rest. The land was meant for the people. The land was God who made the land. The ground on which we stand. Why should we be beggars with the ballot in our hand? God made the land for the people. Clear the way for liberty, the land must all be free. Liberals will not falter from the fight that's turning beat. Till the flag we love so well will fight from sea to sea. Oh, the land that is free for the people. The land, was God who made the land. The ground on which we stand. Why should we be beggars with the ballot in our hand? God made the land for the people. The army now is marching on the battle to begin. The standard now is raised on high to face the battle din. We'll never cease from fighting till the victory we win. And the land is free for the people. The land, the God who made the land. The ground on which we stand. Why should we be beggars with the ballot in our hand? God made the land for the people. Right.
Yeah, and Henry George wasn't a socialist technically, right? But that last line, why should we be beggars with a ballot in our hand? God gave the land to the people. That's that is populism, right? That is the people against the landowning elite, the people against the landowning aristocracy. So take that for what you will. There we go. All right. Comments on the upcoming discussions with Trump and Russia. Well, look, Trump says they're going to meet Putin. It's going to happen. My goodness. Let's hope that this war in Ukraine ends. Let's hope that there's no way the deep state messes this up. This war has got to end. And, Trump wants it. The American people want it. Everybody wants it. This war has got to end. Let's just hope that they can meet and end this war. And when there's a peace deal, we have got to come out swinging in support of it. We have got to be out in the streets loudly supporting the peace deal, loudly saying we want it. And, I saw, when Tulsi had her confirmation hearing, there were jackasses with Ukrainian flags outside protesting. Kill more of my people. Keep this war going. Tulsi wants peace. That's not allowed. They're going to scream bloody murder. Ukraine is being betrayed. We have just got to come out in support of this peace deal as loudly as we possibly can, because there is going to be, the deep state is going to scream high heaven, like, oh my God, no, you're betraying Ukraine. You're giving in to Putin. We have got to show public support for this peace deal as loudly as we possibly can. The second that this peace deal is on the table, we have got to be out there. And I don't know how we're going to do it. And I don't know what we can do, right? I wish, this is why we've got to grow. We have got to have 1,000 more members, right? If I look at all the great work they're doing out in LA now, that Dan and Patrick and Ishmael are doing out there, and I look at what we just did in DC and all that, if we had thousands of members, we would be organizing the rally right now. Right, we'd already have set the date, and we'd have a national day of action set. But we are limited in our membership and our capabilities. But, we're going to do our best to show as loudly as possible that there is support for the peace deal. And that's what we got to do. And that's what we got to do. We need to show, and I have said this before, if we can't loudly support anything good Donald Trump advocates, we can't expect him to do anything good, right? So yeah. So that's that. I don't know what more to say about it. So yeah, there we go. All right. How did you manage to push through when you got kicked out of left circles, like the communist socialist circles? Was it because you were doing good for yourself? Oh boy, Gabby, I mean, there's a lot there. It's a daily struggle. I mean, to think that people that I was close to, people that I considered to be like family members, turned on me the way they did. How do you deal with that? But it's a lot. I will say it takes courage. It takes courage. And the other thing is you can't live on the internet. You've got to be involved in stuff in real life, right? You got to be you've got to be committed, because people are a lot nicer and more civil in real life than they are on the internet. And so a big way is you got to keep showing up at stuff in real life. I will say one thing that I absolutely do not regret, and I am very proud of the fact that 2.5 years ago, it's more than that now, I walked in to the Manhattan Family Church, the Unification Church, anti-communist, right-wing church from Korea that supports North Korea, that does business in North Korea. And I showed up on Sunday morning and I shook hands with their pastor and I said, look, this is who I am, and I want to work with you guys. And they had no idea what to make of me. And I showed up the next Sunday, and I showed up the next Sunday, and I showed up the next Sunday, and I've been going ever since, and I think that is one of the best decisions I ever made, because, this is a group that has been smeared and harassed by the same people that have smeared and harassed CPI, the Cult Awareness Network. And, I mean, they don't agree with me on a lot of things. I don't agree with them necessarily on a lot of things. But you know what? I did it. I showed up. And, we have got to learn to find friends in uncommon places. The fact that Angela McCurdle and I have gotten along with each other, right? Libertarians, you can probably watch, if you go back, you go back a few hundred streams, you'll find me screaming about how much I hate libertarians. But there's a libertarian that I was just lauding and cheering on this stream, because you've got to make friends in real life. And sometimes I'll just tell you this. Don't assume that the people that are going to be your best friends are going to be people you agree with. And don't assume that the people that you're able to carry out real work with are going to be people you agree with. There are plenty of people who think very, very close to what I think, who are completely useless when it comes to building any mass organizing, right? They never show up for anything, and they agree with me, but they sit behind their computer and they're idiots, right? And so is it like, does it really matter that they agree with me? Well, I mean, I guess, okay, I'm glad they agree with me, but they probably won't, because if all this is a form of passive entertainment, eventually you'll change the channel, right? And that's true. If all this is for you is a form of entertainment, I'm just telling you this right now, right? If you're watching this channel as a way to get entertained, eventually you're going to change the channel. And so you're going to watch somebody else who says something completely different. And eventually you're going to get bored of them and you're going to change the channel. If you're in this for real, it's going to be more than a form of passive entertainment. You're going to get involved. You're going to get invested in this. You're going to have skin in the game. You're going to get involved in building stuff and coming to activities. You're going to have friends in these circles. You're going to meet people. That's how this becomes a real thing. And so for this to become real for you, it can't be a form of passive entertainment. And there are a lot of people on the internet who say they agree with me, but it's just fandom, right? It's just passive entertainment. And you're not going to agree with me for long. Give it a year, you won't agree with me. You'll find something else to watch, right? So that's what you have to keep in mind, right? If this is just a form of passive entertainment, it really doesn't matter. And you can say you agree with everything I say, but you don't really, because eventually you're going to change the channel. So there's that. The other thing is that, examine your own motivations. You got to look inward. Right? You got to look inward so you can look outward. I love psychoanalysis. And we are going to publish, there's 2 books. One is called Marx and Freud, A Dialectical Relationship, and the other is called The Psychology of Reaction. And they're out of, they're the copyright, they're in the public domain. We're going to publish them as CPI. They're about psychoanalysis, right? And I really believe that that every person who wants to become a serious organizer needs to do some psychoanalytic work. And it's funny because Lyndon LaRouche said the same thing, and I think he was right about that. You need to look inward. You need to understand your inner motivations. You need to understand your fears. You need to understand what really drives you. And that's really what the psychoanalytic method does, right? Is psychoanalysis magic? No. Does psychoanalytic analysis cure all mental illness? No, right? But Sigmund Freud developed a method for examining yourself. And basically, you walk through life and, floating inside your mind, there are a variety of ghosts, I guess you could say. There are a variety of motivations that you have that you are not aware of, right? That, you want to do this. You want to eat a hot dog. You want to walk down the street. Why do you want that? Well, you want it for one of 3 reasons. You want it because it's your bodily urge. That's your id. You want it because you just think you want it intellectually, or you want it because you believe you should want it. And that's your superego, right? So you want it for bodily reasons. That's your id. You want it for intellectual reasons that are your own, meaning you thought you wanted it, or you want it because somebody of a higher power, the voice of your parent, the voice of an authority figure, the voice of God, whatever, some authority figure that you look up to told you should want it. Those are the 3 reasons you want something, right? Well, you need to know what those are. You need to examine your id. You need to examine your ego. You need to examine your superego, right? And it's interesting because the human mind is divided in 3, right? Sigmund Freud basically said we're all a triangle. I agree with that. We're all a triangle. You are a triangle, right? Your mind is a triangle, right? It is, right? Your mind, your conscious mind, the thoughts in your mind, those are called your ego. That's your ego, the thoughts in your head. Why is Caleb talking at me right now? Why am I watching this YouTube channel? That's an interesting shirt Caleb's wearing as I watch him. That's your ego. That's your conscious mind. In addition to your conscious mind, you have your body, right? You have to go take a dump or pee or whatever. You have sexual desires. You're hungry. You feel tired when you don't have energy. That's your id. That's just your bodily desires. That's your id, right? So below your subconscious, you have your id. Below your ego, you have your conscious mind, which is your ego. You have your id. And then you also, in addition to that, you have what's called your superego. And that is the voice of your parent in your head. That is the voice of right and wrong. That's your conscience, right? That is you trying to be better. That's like somebody you look up to, right? That's, you're trying to please God. You're trying to please a parent. You're trying to please an authority figure. You want to be proud of you, right? That's your superego, right? And all of us are triangles, right? And there's a constant war in our minds between our ego, our id, and our superego, right? And it's constant battle. The ego is conscious. You know your thoughts, but your superego is not always conscious, and your id is not always conscious. And sometimes, if you're really hungry, it can put you in a bad mood, right? I'm sure we've all been there, right? We're just really frustrated. We have a problem that's really frustrating, and we're getting really, really mad about something in our conscious mind. And then we realize, you know what? I'm really hungry. And then you go eat something, and whatever you were worried about, it actually wasn't so bad. It was the fact that you were hungry. Your hunger slipped in. Well, that was your id, right? Your id affected your conscious mind, and you didn't know it. Your subconscious id, your bodily desire to have food, you didn't have food. You were hungry. And because you were hungry, it made you way more worried and anxious than you should have been. Well, that's your id, right? There's also times where you may feel really, really bad about yourself. You may feel a huge amount of shame. I'm a bad person or whatever. And after a while, you realize that's because your parent or your religion or something that you had caused you to feel really, really guilty about something. And then you realize, oh, that's my superego talking, right? And, there's nothing wrong with an id. You need an id, right? You need to be able to eat, you know, etc. And you need a superego. You need a right and wrong. You need someone to look up to. You need, you know, to have a filial heart. And that's a really important thing. Like liberals, the liberal ideology says superego must be destroyed. And that is completely wrong. You need to have an id, or else you'd starve to death, or your bowels would explode because you never go to the bathroom, or we'd never procreate. So you need to have an id, right? Animals all have an id, but you also need to have a superego. And animals don't have a superego. And you have your conscious mind, which is your ego. And all three of these things are important. And your mind is essentially, it is a battle, a constant push and pull between your ego, your id, and your superego. Now, that is a brilliant understanding that Sigmund Freud had. And you have, in order to really drive yourself, you have to think of yourself as like a car, right? You know, and you're a car, right? And you have to know yourself well enough that you can drive, right? And the longer you've driven the same vehicle, the better you are at it. The first time someone's driven a 16-passenger van, it's very difficult. But after they've done it 100 times, they know what to do. So in order to drive yourself better, you need to know your ego, know your id, and you need to know your superego, right? And you need to be able to navigate yourself, right? That's part of having, you know, effective mental health and being an effective adult, is that you need to know your id, you need to know your ego, and you need to know your superego. And that's just part of what it means to be human. And as you come to terms, you come to terms with your subconscious feelings, right? The anger that you might have at your parents, or the shame that you might have about various things, the guilt that you might have that underlies things. I mean, this is work that everyone needs to do, right? That the bulk of what your mind does is not conscious. The ego, which is your conscious mind, is a very, 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 very limited part of what your mind does. The overwhelming majority of what your mind does, you're not aware of, right? I mean, that's why when you're dating somebody, they say you have chemistry with them. What does that mean? That means that your body language, the way you smell, you interpret something about that person that you're attracted to them, and they interpret something about you that makes them attracted to you. And you can't fake it. You can't think, I will be attracted to this person. I will be attracted to this. No, it doesn't work. And they can't think, I will be attracted to this person. Nope, doesn't work, right? When you have chemistry with somebody, it's because there are subconscious things. You like the way the person smells, even if you can't consciously smell it. You like their body language, even if you can't detect it. The overwhelming majority of communication between human beings takes place on a subconscious level. So you need to know your subconscious. And we can get little insights into our subconscious through dreams, through memories, through feelings, right? Sometimes you feel a certain way. It comes up in a certain way. You don't know where it came from, right? Well, you need to dig into where it came from. And that's what psychoanalysis is. And I believe in psychoanalysis. Psychoanalysis is largely rejected by the modern scientific community. And honestly, a lot of what Sigmund Freud said is malarkey, right? I'll be honest with you. I mean, the guy who invented psychoanalysis, a lot of what he said was bull honky. However, we only remember the bull honky, and we don't give him credit for the things that had never been done before. Sigmund Freud discovered the subconscious. No one had ever said that you have a subconscious mind. Freud said that. Well, that's a huge discovery that modern psychology takes for granted. Freud invented that. What else? Talk therapy. The idea that you can improve your mental health by sitting down with a therapist and talking about your feelings. Sigmund Freud invented that. No one had ever done that before, right? That's important. And that's just kind of taken for granted. In fact, courts will assign people, right? If you commit a crime, the judge might require you to go to have so many hours of therapy and all that. It's almost an assumed reality now. Well, Freud invented that. So we need to give him credit for what he invented. And we also just need to recognize that there were a lot of things that he believed that were bullshit, right? Freud was not a prophet. He was not infallible. He did not have divine wisdom, and he wasn't very scientific. He followed his instincts. He spent a lot of time talking to prisoners. He spent a lot of time talking to college students, and he spent a lot of time talking to very, very rich people, very, very wealthy people in Victorian Austria who paid him lots of money to sit down and talk about their life problems. And through doing that, he developed a large amount of insight into how people's minds worked in his time. And he developed a system of thought, which is flawed, right? I'm not going to die on the hill of psychoanalysis, but I will tell you that, you know, the ego, the superego, the id, it exists, right? And I must say, you know, I'll just throw this out there, right? And I don't even know what to make of this, but, you know, in the Bible, and this is very interesting to me, right? I'm still processing this with my mind. I don't even know what to think of this, but in the Bible, Jesus was asked, what is the greatest of all commandments, right? The Pharisees were trying to trick him, and they wanted to get him to say one of the 10 commandments was more important than the other. And so Jesus answers the question, and he says, the two greatest commandments are love your God with all your heart, your soul, and your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. Now, I always assume that first one, love your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. I always assume that was just whatever. I just said, love your God as much as you possibly can. It was just, that's what he was saying. But now that I know that my brain has three parts, that I have an id, an ego, and a superego, and apparently that's not the only place Jesus refers to your heart, soul, and mind, I want to go back and translate what was the word for heart, what was the word for mind, and what was the word for soul. It sounds to me like Jesus was referring to three different parts of the human mind. You know, that might sound crazy, but the fact that he says this, right? He says, love your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. He doesn't say love your God with everything. All right? He doesn't say love your God, soul with your entire being, with everything you got. No, he says your heart and your soul and your mind. It makes me think that on some level, if you go back and you look at the original Greek, he's referring to these three parts, and that maybe he identifies and defines them differently. But it seems like, and apparently, if you go back throughout history, Sigmund Freud was not the first person to divide the human mind up into three parts, to say that you have three parts of your mind. And in fact, there are a number of spiritual systems in the ancient world, in the Eastern tradition, that say you have three parts, that your mind has three parts. And that's deep, right? And I'm not ready to give you a full talk about that. One of these days I will get on here and I will go into great depth about that. That's very, very deep. That's very, very, very deep on a number of levels, right? That your mind has three parts, right? That are kind of pushing against each other. And that Sigmund Freud identifies them this way, but ancient philosophical systems also said you have three parts, that you're a triangle. That's, I don't know. Anyway, that's a long ramble. But basically, the question is, how did I manage to get through it? Well, first of all, I have a wife who I love, and she loves me, and we've been there for each other. And there's that. Secondly, I am not afraid to take risks and keep going. And thirdly, I've done a huge amount of psychoanalytic work and examined my own motivations and said, what do I want? What do I want? Why am I doing this? Right? But the other thing is that I can't do this alone. There are no self-made men in this world, or women. And if it wasn't for all of you who just keep coming back, I wouldn't be here. And we got to be here for each other, right? And that there are no self-made men. And that's why, you know, at one point, there was a certain very famous person in our circles who, you know, I don't even know what to make. Sometimes this person is very friendly to me and boosts me, and other times this person stabs me in the back, and I don't even know what to make of them. But at one point, it got back to me. They told multiple people, and multiple people called me and said, Caleb, you must stop organizing. You've got to stop organizing. You can have a YouTube channel, but you must stop organizing. And I'm still disgusted by this person that they would say that. Because if I wasn't organizing, I wouldn't be doing this. The only reason that I'm on here streaming, talking about anti-imperialism, talking about this is because I want to organize. Philosophers have only analyzed the world. The point, however, is to change it, said Karl Marx. This is all about organizing. If you're not building a real organization, why are you talking about any of this? All right? You shouldn't be talking about any of this if you're not trying to change the world. Philosophers have only analyzed the world, but the point, however, is to change it. That's why I'm doing this. I want to change the world. I want to change the world. And so, you know, if it wasn't for all of you who are here trying to change the world with me, I would have given up a long time ago. I'm in this because this is how I know to relate to other people. My entire adult life has been spent in communist groups, anti-imperialist groups. I know how to connect with people by being an organizer. And yes, journalists have only analyzed the world. The point, however, is to change it. And for me, it's all about the community that we build, and it's all about the mission that we're on. It's not just an ego thing. So there we go. There we go. All right. Do you think that the American tech sector will win the monopoly with China or cope crash our economy? Any thoughts? Well, look, we need to team up with China in our tech sector. The idea of making China the enemy is stupid, right? We need American corporations to team up with Chinese corporations to have new innovations that become the property of all humanity. Made in China 2025 was China's tech program, and they wanted it to be a joint operation with America. And that's what I want. And I want the fusion energy research to be a joint operation with America. We need to advocate that China and America become allies and best friends and cooperate for technological advancement. Because if not, we can count on America coming apart. We're at a crossroads as America, and we either just deteriorate and it becomes the fall of Rome, or we join the new world and become equal partners in the new world that is arising. There is no future in imperialism, and there is future in win-win cooperation. China is not our enemy, and making them our enemy because we have a competitive, zero-sum, scarcity mindset is the wrong approach, right? The competitive mind is a scarcity mind, right? The idea that there's only so much in the world, so I've got to take away from somebody else if I'm going to gain for me. No, the pie, if the pie is only this big, sure, the only way to get more is to cut into somebody else's slice, but that's a scarcity mind. But if you understand that the pie is huge and it's always growing, then you can understand that there's no reason to cut into anybody else's slice, and that getting rich on the competitive plane is not good. And it's not good for the world. And a competitive mind is a scarcity mind. A competitive mind is a pessimistic mind. It's a bitter mind. It's a depressed mind. It's an anxious mind. If everything that you have came at somebody else's expense, you're going to be constantly terrified of losing it. You're going to know that you're not worthy of it. No, you don't want to gain on a competitive plane. You want to gain on an expansive plane, and you want everyone you come in contact with, to feel that they got richer as a result of interacting with you. I'm dead serious here. You never want anyone to interact with you and feel that they got poorer, that they got scammed, they got ripped off. No, you want everyone who interacts with you in your life to feel that they gained somehow by knowing you, that by knowing you, they got smarter, by knowing you, they got new opportunities, by knowing you, they made new connections. You want everyone you come in contact to gain because of you. And you need to give more out to the universe than you get back, right? I mean, that's, if you want to gain, you need to give. I'll tell you one thing, and I am not the guy to give financial advice, but one thing that I have observed over the years of my life is that when I'm spending money, I make money. And that makes no sense from a mathematical standpoint, right? When I am not spending money, when I'm saving my money, I'm poor. And when I'm out spending money, I make more money. Now, how does that work? That doesn't make any mathematical sense. And a good financial advisor will say, save as much of your money as possible. But I have learned in my life, whenever I'm saving my money, I'm staying at home, I'm saving my money and all that, then I don't get new economic opportunities. I don't have new economic expansion. I don't make money. However, when I'm out doing things, which costs money, more money comes my way. Why? Because I'm giving more out to the universe. I'm out making connections. I'm getting energized by my experiences. I'm meeting new people. I'm learning new things, and I'm doing that by spending money, and that enables me to have more money. However, if I'm sitting at home saving my money, well, I just get poorer, and the money that I have just gradually goes away, and I stay poorer. And that doesn't make mathematical sense, but It's true. And you can actually Google this. There are all kinds of articles about this. People who make money spend money. And people who save their money and don't do anything, and they eventually run out of money. And that doesn't make any sense, mathematically speaking. But it makes sense in how the universe works. You get more when you give more. So I'm not the person to give financial advice. I'm just telling you how the universe works. You want every person you interact with to feel they gained from interacting with you. You never want to view things in a competitive way. The earth is rich. There is enough for everybody to go around. And you want to create as much as you can. You want to find your inner creative power, and you want to just create as much as you can. You want to invent, you want to expand, you want to, you want to constantly be creating and giving out to the universe. That's what you need to do. And if you do that, if you're constantly making everyone you come into contact with feel that they got more by interacting with you, that they gained from interacting with you, if you're constantly improving the world around you, if you're constantly creating and being creative, you will gain. So there you go. There you go. All right. Do you think Trump will investigate people responsible for Russiagate? I hope so, and it looks like he's already doing it. I think he's already doing it, Fatima. I think he's already doing it. It's already happening. It's already happening. So I would say, you betcha. You betcha. Is that Sarah Palin? You betcha. Right? Sarah Palin, who does support Julian Assange, who did come out and supported Julian Assange. That was pretty cool. So, yeah, there you go. There you go. All right, folks. Dahe, Open Secrets website says Bernie took $1.4 million from Big Pharma in the last election cycle. Yeah. I mean, Bernie Sanders, the way he interacted with RFK, utterly disappointing. Utterly disappointing. And like the fact that they attacked him for selling onesies. I mean, what in the world is that? I mean, how dare this nonprofit raise money by selling something? God forbid. God forbid, right? I mean, I saw Jimmy Dore had a great piece where he talked about how much Bernie made money from a book that he wrote. Oh my God. So there we go. There we go. There you go. All right, folks. Well, listen, it's been fun. I wish you all my best. I'll be back soon, maybe tomorrow, maybe not, but I'll be back. Yeah, good times, everybody. Good times. And dare to struggle, dare to win. We are winning, folks. We are in the middle of a revolution against this rotten deep state and against their permanent war economy. I am so proud of everything CPI has accomplished. We are winning. We are winning. New upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. While the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today.